So thanks for coming. I appreciate everybody coming out on a Saturday, especially. I'm sorry to ruin your weekend, but we'll try and make the best of it anyway. There's so much to cover, really. I have pretty much, I'm going to be showing you every picture I've ever taken. So pretty much you'll get every. I'm holding nothing back. I see it all. With crappy Polaroids and everything. It's all there. One thing I'm curious about is how many people here are actually at present students rather than like working professionals. So a bunch. Okay. Well, I can go. So we'll be talking about lots of stuff because not to sound corny, but at the risk of sounding corny, I still feel like I'm a student for sure. And you know, when I was in school, you know, there's times when you stay up all night to, you know, finish printing something because you're on a, you know, got a deadline or a critique the next day. And boy, I thought when I was done with school, I would never have to do that again. And I would have to say probably 1 to 2 days a week I put in all-nighters anyway, whether it's on the computer or actually working on a picture or on location, or like last night I couldn't sleep, I just couldn't sleep. I was at the hotel, and what I was doing, we were talking about this yesterday, is I actually brought with a, I recommend this highly, I'm not endorsing, I'm not a paid endorser, but I can't remember the name of it anyway, but there is some kind of CD you can buy. Yeah, Julianne Kost, K-O-S-T, she's employed by Adobe, and she goes around the country as like a Photoshop evangelist teacher person. She is a whiz beyond and really articulate performer. She's great, really, really great. So she came out with a CD called, I don't know, Julianne Kost Guide to Photoshop or whatever it is. But it's I wish I could remember the name of the company that makes this, like software classes or something. I can't remember the name. I wish I'm sorry about that. But anyway, it's a fantastic thing. I'm sure you can locate it online. And what I'm doing is actually going through it like chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter, because it's amazing how much stuff I don't know, you know? And it's amazing how many things, I mean, just the other day, for what it's worth, kind of go backwards here a little bit. But there's another application called C1, which is Phase makes it. They make big digital backs, and they also make processing software. And what's kind of amazing is software companies have come out with unbelievably powerful programs, like amazingly powerful programs. But in terms of actual training, there's kind of very little. And it's sort of you have to talk to somebody who knows somebody, or go online, or get a tip from this person or that person. And I really don't like that. I don't like it at all, because I feel like, you know, in the days of film, I've always processed my own film, my black and white stuff, and I make all my own prints. I didn't have assistants that I would go like. But I remember hearing assistants at the time talking to each other, saying, "Oh wow, you know, we go to Lexington Labs, like Bruce Weber runs his stuff there, and it's like really creamy and great." You know, and it's like, well, what the hell does that mean? You know, like maybe you don't want it creamy. Maybe he has no idea what he's talking about. Maybe, you know, whatever. We would do things that in the old RIT days we knew was called a ring around, which is not a group social practice. What it was a thing where you basically, like I would try every developer, I'd take it from like Plus X or something, and I would develop it in every developer, like Microdol and D76 and Default Blue and Microfine and D23 and all these different developers. And then we'd actually take those and print them on a whole bunch of different papers, and then we'd lay them all out and look at them and just do the taste test and say, like, oh, I like that, you know, and then later turn it over and say, I can't believe it, that was processed in this and printed on that. I would never pick it. You know what I mean? So you sort of have to give yourself a chance to figure out your own preferences, as opposed to just taking somebody's tips. And more often than not, you find people that work in Photoshop and other things, they say, oh, I just don't use that. You set it here, and don't worry, it'll be fine. It's like, I don't know if I'll be fine. I mean, how do you know? You know, you might actually take that thing and uncheck it and turn the one next to it and think, wow, that's it, that's the one. You know what I mean? So it really is weird to me that you have these unbelievably powerful applications. And I mean, it's like somebody giving you the keys to a Ferrari, and they've never actually driven it. They don't know that you can put it in drive. And they say, oh, you sit there and you look, and chicks looks at you, and driving it, it's really cool, and it's really beautiful parked in front of your house, and they've never actually, what's this key for? Oh, that turns it on. What's that noise? You know, it's that kind of thing. And I feel like for a lot of digital things that is the case, because it's all so new that even the so-called experts often aren't experts. And that's why for me, we were talking about this last night, is I, about 2 years ago, cold turkey, really just decided I would dive into the whole visual thing and just embrace it. And the part that was terrifying is I started working with a couple of different so-called visual experts. And what was scary is the extent to which they don't know what they don't know. You know, it's like, at least I know what I don't know, and I'm trying to learn it. But there are a lot of people out there who really don't know what they don't know, but they're passing information along very freely, and there's a good reason why it's free, because it's working. So I found that was really not a cool thing. So I resolved to try and learn this stuff, and I didn't expect to be on the far side of 50 and actually to be at the bottom of a really steep learning curve. That was not in my plans at all, like at all, at all. I finally was like getting the hang of what I was doing. So anyway, I'll start from the beginning. I'll go backwards now. And start here. Now, can I dim the lights? Is there a dimming thing? All right. So, Canon has a program called Explorers of Light, but I prefer Exploiter of Light, because I'll just use the hell out of it anyway I want to. Okay, so this is me and Arnold Newman. This is me when I was 21. And I moved to New York. I promised I would tell the story. I was talking to Alex last night. So I went to RIT for a year in 1974 after 2 freshman years at different schools. So it was my 3rd freshman year, basically. And I learned a tremendous amount, but I found it very frustrating at the time. Because I found like at that time, we were just talking about this too, they had a BS program or a BA program, Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts, and you couldn't do both. You kind of had to pick one or the other. And even the faculty harbored this kind of mutual animosity towards one another, where the commercial guys thought of the fine arts guys as the artsy-fartsy guys, and the fine art guys thought of the commercial guys as the commercial hacks. So that was really great for students passing that along. It's nice, healthy prejudice right off the bat. And I just felt like it was baloney, because I thought, like, you know, I want to learn how to use an 8x10 camera, and I want to learn how to use strobes, but I also want to be able to photograph alienation, you know, that kind of thing. I felt like all those pieces are together. Like photography, if anything, is probably one of the most intriguing and frustrating creative outlets there is, because it's so much of a right brain, left brain thing. You know, part of you is thinking, let's see, this F11, the Velos factor, and I have to open up half the stuff for this, and the focal plane, blah, blah, blah. And the other part's like, shh, 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 I'm just trying to take a picture. So, unfortunately, those two things are very much operating all the time. And my personal view is, unless you get the technical stuff kind of down, so it's really second nature, it's always, in a way, there's always this little voice yammering away in your ear that doesn't like to do what you're trying to do. So, after my first year at RIT, I'm from Chicago, so I went back to Chicago, and I had written a letter away. I think right at the end of school, I wrote a letter to Arnold Newman, who's like my idol beyond all mortal men, portrait photographer. Are you folks familiar with his work?
Yes.
That's good. So unfortunately, he just passed away a couple of months ago. But I just thought if there's anybody I wanted to work for, it would be Arnold, for sure. So maybe in Chicago, back home for a week or 2, and I got a response back from him on his letterhead. And it said, "Dear Greg, you know, thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, we don't really hire people from out of town. And thanks, take care, goodbye." That's pretty much what it was. And I looked at it and I just thought, wow, like, I have Arnold Newman's signature. So, I mean, it was just my first brush with races. You know, I actually was on his letterhead. I was holding my hand. So I immediately phoned him up and said, "Hi, Arnold, this is Gregory Heisler from Chicago." He's like, "What?" I said, "Oh, I thought I made myself perfectly clear." You know, he's like, "Oh," in the phone. And it was a pretty brief phone call. So I hung up and I was thinking about it, but I thought, you know, I just had a conversation with Arnold Newman. I have a personal relationship with him. So I was really encouraged by that. And that was on a Friday. And on Monday, I took a plane to LaGuardia. Monday morning. I just hopped on the first plane, went to LaGuardia, and called him from the airport. And it's kind of the same thing. picked up the phone, he said, who is this? And I said, it's Gregory Heisler. I talked to him Friday. He said, oh, Jesus Christ, like that kind of thing. And he said, this doesn't sound like long distance. Where are you? And I said, well, actually, I'm at LaGuardia. I just landed. I want to come and see you. And he goes, oh. You know, he and his wife, Augusta, worked together in the studio. She really ran the business and did all the photography. And he wasn't big on the whole button. He kind of never figured that out, so he would cup his hand over the phone. And I distinctly remember this little exchange where he said, Jesus, Augusta, he's here now. What are we supposed to do? And I could hear her say, oh, Arnold, what's wrong with you? Have him come over. So, muffled and stuff. Let's go back to the well, I'm a very busy man, but I suppose I could see you for a few minutes. So, I went over there, probably wearing this very outfit. I want you to know, I actually sold men's clothes, and when I was in college, that was like a job I had in Chicago. So I thought I was pretty spiffy there, for sure. And I looked like one of the wild and crazy guys. You know? But I went there, I remember I was definitely wearing a tie. And he talked to me for just a little while, and I had my portfolio, and it wasn't great. You know, it was like a picture of my dad, a picture of my dog, and a picture of the shop of the yearbook, and you know, it's like that kind of stuff. But apparently he actually had been looking for somebody and hadn't found anyone. I don't know if it was so much qualifications as it was somebody that's willing to work for $76.22 a week or whatever it was. And he said, well, if you can stay in New York till tomorrow, we'll try out in the darkroom and see what happens. So I did. I stayed the night and went to his place the next day and made a couple of prints in the darkroom, and then he had me spot some prints, and I was so nervous that like my stippling technique was perfect. My hand was shaking so bad. And after that, he said, well, you know, I think that's good. You can stay. So I literally stayed in the studio. He let me sleep in the studio for 3 days. Then I went home the next weekend, got some clothes, and came back, and just moved to New York like that. And you know, it's the kind of thing I'd probably never do now. But I was just, you know, I was like 21. I was really naive. I didn't know any better. So I just did it, and it wasn't any dreams of New York or the great, you know, bright lights of the big city. If Arnold had lived in, you know, Kansas City, I'd be in Kansas City. You know, it's like wherever, it was just to work with him. And I worked with him for about 10 months or so. And then I left because he was a yeller. He's a kind of yeller. So, and I didn't grow up with yellers. My family were all really nice. And he didn't mean anything by it, but I just was not used to it. It really rattled me. And he's one of these guys, instead of saying, oh, excuse me, Greg, can you move the light over there? It's like in front of 10 people. Be like, how many times do I have to tell you? You know, it's like that kind of stuff. So for me, it was just brutal. But the person that was there before me had been there for 5 years, and the person that came after me was probably there for about 7 years. So, you know, for them, it just rolled off like water off a duck's back, and it was fine. Because he did, like, you know, later in the day, he'd come up, he'd say, hey, I was my favorite photographer. You know, like that kind of thing, and it was fine. He didn't mean anything by it. It was just his way of communicating. So, but I literally was getting an ulcer, for sure. I mean, literally, it's kind of where I'd go to the bathroom there, and after 5 minutes, he'd be like, what the hell are you doing in there? What are you doing? It's like that kind of thing. So just, you know, I just was constantly in the pan. So I left there after 10 months. I promise I actually will show another slide. There are. I'll show both before the day's over. But I left there and then went to work with a fashion photographer named Bill King, who was passed away a long time ago, but he was very big fashion advertising photographer in the mid-'70s, and he did these ads for Black Llama Mix, like What Becomes a Legend Most. It was a big famous advertising campaign, and he shot really animated pictures of models on white backgrounds, like jumping around, really super duper animated. So that was a completely different experience from Arnold's place, where I was making like exhibition prints in the darkroom, and every millimeter of cropping counted. And this was just like a totally, and also I was the only assistant at Arnold's. At Bill King's place, there were like 5 assistants or 4. And I was the low man on the totem pole, so my main responsibilities were like fantasticking off the white Formica, because it was like a white Formica palace kind of place. And, you know, preparing, getting his lunch from the deli and laying it out for him, those kind of things. So after like 2 weeks of that, I get noticed, because I just felt like I wasn't going to get any closer to him, because nobody else was planning on leaving anytime soon. And then I worked with a guy named Eric Miola, who was a really terrific advertising photographer. He's a really great colorist, kind of in the family of like Pete Turner, that kind of very graphic, strong color stuff. When I went to work for him, he had just shot Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run record cover, and he's terrific. And he was only, I mean, he was probably only about 30 at the time. He was young. So for me, it was great. It was like the first chance I actually was in a situation where there was some give and take, and I mean, it wasn't like I was a consultant or anything, but he was, you know, he'd say, oh, what do you think about this? And he'd do things, and it was great. It was really, really terrific. Then after that, I worked with a photographer who did corporate work, and that was, again, a completely different situation. It was a guy who was on the road shooting corporate pictures. I had no idea what corporate pictures even were before I went to work for him. I'd never even heard of it as a field. And it was the kind of thing, it was fascinating. Like, we'd go to a steel mill, and then we'd go to a pharmaceutical place, and then we'd go to a, you know, chairman of the board's office, and it was like this fantastic, like having a constantly like a high school field trip every day, except you could go to these places and people take you around and explain it, and I thought it was great. I really liked it. And he was very much like a seat of the pants shooter. He was an old magazine photographer, so he would really, he was very kind of spontaneous how he would work. With Eric, it was Eric's incredibly organized and very meticulous, and everything's kind of just so. And in those days, before the P-Touch, we had Dymo labelers, and everything had a Dymo label on it. You know, it was just so. So you learn things different ways from different people. And oftentimes, I personally found assisting to be a wildly useful thing. I learned a ton. I probably did it for a total of about 1.5 years. And I learned a ton. I learned a lot by example in terms of how people work and what they do, but I also learned a lot in terms of what not to do. Like, I would never yell at an assistant. You know, that's just, I just would never do it. And I've been on sets, on shoots where there was a tremendous amount of tension because the photographer was just a flaming asshole and a horrible person. And the level of tension on the set was completely unproductive, and it was horrible. You know, and you just see that, and you think, wow, I'm not going to work that way. That's not the way to do things. So it was really great. And also, you learn lots of stuff. I mean, in the digital world now, it's a big thing. People talk about naming conventions, like how you name your pictures and how you keep all your files straight, stuff like that. And like at Arnold's place, it was before it was called a naming convention, before the, you know, workflow even existed as a term. And it was really cool to see. He actually had, I remember this very distinctly because it was such a revelation when it happened. When I was working there, everything had a job number. And the job number was like 5632 or something like that. It was a 4-digit number, like 5471 or something. And I couldn't figure out what it was because it wasn't the date, and I tried to invert the date, it wasn't that. I was trying didn't make any sense to me. And I thought, oh, maybe it's the Hebrew calendar, but because Arnold was really very, very much identified that way, and I thought maybe that was something that wasn't that. And then I went back in the files and looked, and the first job was 1. So we were on the 5,634th job, and the next one was the 5,635th job. You know, and stuff like that sticks with you. It's just great. I mean, just the simplicity of it is great. So, anyway, I'll move on. Let me move on. Okay. So, big thing happened. You know, we've gotten hit by the digital tsunami, it seems like, to me. And it is like a tsunami. It was like 5 years ago, you kind of heard about it, and then I personally didn't pay any attention to it, and I thought, oh, for sure, it's just going to be like a passing spell of bad weather. It'll come and go, and we don't have to worry about that stuff. And then it seemed like more people were getting into it, and then the other thing that happened is I had a bunch of friends who were photographers who really got on the computer thing early, not in terms of digital stuff, but in terms of scanning their pictures and the internet and doing things, and without exception, all of them kind of stopped doing their photography. Once they got to the computer stuff, they loved it, and they were gone. And I just thought, wow, I don't want that to happen to me, because it'd be like, I'd call them, so what are you doing? Well, I'm working on my portfolio. Yeah, I'm trying a new thing for my book. You know, and it was just, I'm getting my slides organized anew, and they were gone. You know, and I just thought, well, yikes, I don't want that to happen. So I pretty much dragged my feet as long as I could. And about 2 summers ago, summer of 2004, I had a very, very, very painful summer in terms of shooting pictures. The pictures worked out great, but I was doing a lot of work for editorial clients, magazines. And editorial work is fantastic. I find it really satisfying, it's really interesting. And believe me, you can make untold hundreds of dollars every week. It's really, it is. You can make $200, $300, $400, $500 a week, really, no problem. It's awesome, really awesome. And you're so lucky to do it because it's fun, you know. So it's great, really great. So anyway, but I do love doing editorial work because I'm a sucker and a moron, and it was. And that summer was hard because I had a number of things that I was doing, and I was working in a very involved way. I would use a lot of 8x10 and 4x5 and 2 1/4, and I'd bounce back and forth, and I would use different cameras for different reasons, which I'll get into later. But I have a couple of assignments. Like there was one I did for, I think it was Business Week towards the end of the summer, where we had to shoot a CEO, a picture I'll show later. A guy like in a big, he was chairman of United Technologies. They make, part of one of their things, they make Sikorsky helicopters and jet engines. And it's a huge company. So I had to shoot him up at his, the Sikorsky plant up in Connecticut with these humongous helicopters. And when you go to photograph these guys, oftentimes you only have a few minutes, right? And so I would bring a ton of gear because you never know what you're going to encounter. And also, many times you have to have several different pictures of these people in several different situations. You need like a close-up of the cover and a picture with the helicopter where you see the helicopter, and then another picture in another place. And so what you actually have to end up bringing with is like 3 or 4 or 5 studios worth of gear so that it can all be set up simultaneously in different places. So the guy can walk from this one to that one to that one to that one and then leave. And it's all done. So I'm not using all the equipment because I think it makes me cool or anything like that. It's just, really, it's just being prepared. But anyway, I handed in the bill, and they just complained, like nobody's business. Oh, Heisler, gee, I mean, that's a lot of money, and, you know, wow, we can't pay this, and I just, this is where good business practices come in, and I was just really, I'm never confrontational with my clients at all, ever. I'm a really friendly, nice guy. But I said, honestly, it's not an estimate, it's not a proposal, it's a bill. It's not a bid, it's a bill, it's an invoice. You have to pay it. The expense has already been incurred, now you have to pay. You like the pictures, you like my portfolio, the way I take the pictures of my portfolio is the way I took the picture for you. Now you have to pay for it. I said, I know, Jesus, it costs so much. And I said, look, I didn't bring with my personal trainer, my masseur, my personal cappuccino person, nothing. It's like, this is just, it's camera gear, it's lighting stuff, you have to pay for it. So they did ultimately, but it's a lot of moaning and groaning. And, but I had several jobs that summer that were like that. And I just started thinking, this is awfully hard, and maybe I should think about how I'm working. Because it just seemed like too painful a way to work. And my assistant at the time, I usually only work with one person at a time. I've never had like a staff. And all summer and earlier that year, he was trying to get me to try out these different digital cameras, and I just wasn't interested. They sort of held no romance to me at all. It just seemed not fun. It seemed like virtual photography instead of photography. So, and we would try them. I mean, we'd have a shoot, and then we'd rent one of the medium format backs, that kind of thing, and try it. But I didn't have my heart in it. After this, I just thought, you know what, maybe I should just try this and see if there's a simpler way to work. So, I will show another picture, I promise. The whole thing won't go like this, don't worry. In October of that year, I got an assignment from ESPN to shoot a bunch of college basketball players around the country for like a college basketball preview shoot. And it was like 2 weeks on the road, just me and one assistant. And I decided I would just travel with a couple of battery-powered lights, and I rented the Canon, the 35mm camera, digital camera, for the 2 weeks, and I just thought, I'm not going to bring anything else, I'm just going to bring this. I have to commit to learning it, so I'm just going to do it. And I brought the manual and sat up in the hotel room and just figured it out. And I just thought, I'll either love it or hate it, but at least I won't be really using the cameras I like and then taking a few grudging pictures with this thing just to do it. So I did. And on the very first shoot, it was mind-boggling. I couldn't believe how much fun it was to use. I was stunned. I mean, it was something I didn't want to love at all. I thought it was great. Like, all of a sudden, I felt like I had roller skates. It was like I could move around, and I wasn't on a tripod, and I could switch things up, and I was very fluid. I mean, obviously, we all started out shooting 35mm, and now I really hadn't used 35 for probably 10 years from this time. I had them, I just hadn't used them. And it was like, wow, this is great. It was so much fun. And also the whole thing of, and the reason I did it on that job is I figured that these guys are college guys, basketball players, they'll wait. Like if I screw up or I have to reboot or something, they can hang out, it's okay. But it didn't happen, it ended up being very smooth. In addition to which, instead of bringing 6 studios worth of lights to do 6 setups, I could do 3 or 4 setups at dusk with my one light. Like I would literally just shoot a picture. I didn't have to overshoot it the way I did with film, where you might have to shoot rolls and rolls of film to make sure you kind of got it. Varying little things. With this stuff, you can see it right away, so it's kind of like when you're done, you're done. I mean, the bad news, some people say, is that then you don't explore it further, but I think you can. To me, the good news is you don't have to overshoot something that doesn't require any more pictures, and you can actually move on to a whole new idea, which I think is invaluable. That's great. So I just thought it was terrific. And then maybe a month after that is when I shot this picture, which was a chairman of the board picture for a magazine. And I actually couldn't believe the quality of it. Again, this is like, I'm not endorsing the Canons, because I just couldn't believe it, really. I've shot tons and tons and tons of like 8x10 and 11x14 and 4x5 film, and I'm used to the look of that. And where I really see it, as opposed to smaller formats, is like in the eyeball, where it looks really translucent and very sharp and not gritty or grainy on any level. And this was the digital file, and I swear this looks for sure as good as any 4x5 picture I've taken like that, easy. But the amazing thing to me with this stuff, like, there's another, you just look at his skin, and it looks like skin. Like people say, oh, digital looks real plasticky. It's like, that is such a load of crap. It's not plastic, it's fine. The digital stuff is fine. It doesn't have a look. It has whatever look you give it. It doesn't have an inherent look, I don't think. But the amazing thing is these two pictures are actually little pieces of that picture, right? And that's essentially a 35mm frame. That, to me, is mind-boggling. Like, you don't need it sharper than that. I don't need more megapixels. If anything, I'd love like big fat pixels that were just the size of a dime, so I could use an 8x10 camera or something. That would be great. But I don't need more pixels. Like, the computer gags on it. It just makes everything slow. So to me, I thought, I don't need more quality in this. And I was literally, the other thing with these pictures, for what it's worth, is I was actually hand-holding this camera with very, very, very dim lights. He was actually being lit by, see the rectangular light in his eye? He's actually being lit by like a little fluorescent light source that I have. So it's actually pretty dim. You know what I mean? So I'm actually hand-holding this camera probably at about a 30th or a 60th at 1.2. It's a very fast lens. That's crazy to be able to get a shot like that. If I tried to do this picture on 4x5, which is probably what I would have done 2 months earlier, I wouldn't have been able to, it's not a great picture, but I would never have been able to vary it. It would have been more tedious. It would have required a lot more light. That was, to me, the huge thing. And also, having shot a lot of large format, when you're lighting with large format, it needs a lot of light. Like, you're sort of shooting in F11, F16, F22 land in that area. If you're shooting medium format, you might be shooting 5, 6, 8, 11, around there. 35mm, all of a sudden you're shooting like F2. Well, you don't need much light to shoot there. That's kind of great. So it was a big deal, a big, big deal. This was a cover I did for Time about a year ago, before the Winter Olympics, last Winter Olympics. This guy, Bodie Miller, and I shot him up in Lake Louise, up in Canada. Shot on a mountainside. And this picture, I mean, again, look at this. There's the whole picture, right? This is the little magic marker thing on his, you can see where he wrote his name on. Like, it's even sharper here than it is there, but it's crazy sharp, You can see the little threads on his thing. You can see his little eyelashes. The leather, the detail. Can you see that there? I guess it's not as sharp as it is here, but take my word for it, it's plenty sharp, right? The little skier back there, the guy in the background, and that's the whole picture. So this stuff's like a teeny little fraction. You see the type on his ski poles? That's nothing. It's an itty-bitty little piece of a frame. But the cool thing about this is, we were set up to shoot him right after he finished a ski run, a practice run. And the idea is he was going to come down the mountain. As soon as he was done, he'd strip off his helmet and we'd shoot him. We set up all morning. And what I did do, because I was just kind of thinking ahead for this thing, is I wanted to be able to be mobile because the snow is hard to work in the snow and all that stuff. So I actually hired extra helpers, literally just to have extra hands. And so they were like human light stands. All the lights were just being held, the strobes were just being held by people. And again, with the digital, one of the reasons I would do that is that after every frame, if I wanted to, I can move the light around and change it. There's no point in shooting 10 pictures the same. So what ended up happening, though, is literally he leaves the top of the mountain. They announce that he's gone, he's launched. And some official comes up and says, oh, you can't shoot here, you got to get out of here, you're not allowed to stand here. And it's like, I've been there for 4 hours, And I said to this guy, look, give me 90 more seconds and you'll never ever see me again, I promise. No, you have to leave right now. And he called security guys over and they were hustling us out of there. And so we had to move over to another side of the fence from where we were, and he was already on his way down the mountain. And we had this set up by the time he got to us. That would have been a picture I would have done again on 4x5 or 8x10 a couple of years earlier. I would never have had the picture. Never have had that kind of spontaneity. And again, to have that kind of spontaneity, and then all the quality was crazy. So that's huge. I became such a convert, total convert. This was the thing I did for time last year. This is what's in the little flyer. We're shooting Bono and the Gateses. And again, it's the kind of thing I've been doing a lot of black and white work with it, because what's cool about digital cameras is that all they shoot is a black and white picture. I don't know how many of you guys know about this stuff, but all it sees is black and white. A digital chip just sees what's called luminance data, which just means lights and darks. It's all the little algorithms, all the mathematics in the software that tells it where to assign colors. But the actual capture, the digital capture, has no inherent color. There is no color. So it's really the ultimate black and white camera. It's like Ansel Adams times 90 if you wanted to be. And what's cool is that every time you shoot a picture with it, you're shooting a color picture and a black and white picture at the same time. You know, you can get any one you want. It's like fine. You know, it's all there. And it's just easy and it's quick. This was what ended up being the cover of the magazine. And again, just to go close in at this stuff, you know, that's his jacket, you know. I think it's amazing. And that's the full frame. And this is not stripped together, that's like a regular straight picture. So just I'll just breeze through some of these because I don't want to take too long with them, but I've done a bunch of time covers over the years, and a lot of this stuff was the bulk of these are really pre-digital. So this was done probably like in 93 or 94, I think. And I shot these people in different places altogether. I mean, I shot the clerk in Johannesburg, and I shot Arafat in Tunis, because he was in exile there. Like, everybody was photographed in a different place. Rabin was photographed in Tel Aviv. So we flew all around doing these pictures, and basically I had to light them and plan on them as being like a lowest common denominator picture, because we had no idea what we were going to run into. And the bulk of what I do by far, is in unbelievably crappy situations, for sure. Like, I'm not like Greg Gorman, one of these guys that has like a phenomenal studio, and it's all great, and I have a staff of 15. There's like Bruno is my archivist, and Danielle is my retoucher, and Francois does all my marketing, and then Oscar is the studio manager. It's kind of like me, and I have an assistant Meredith who kind of helps out with all the other stuff. But it's really just us, and I do all the stuff myself. I mean, not because I like it. I like being a photographer. You know what I mean? Like, so many photographers now, they have like that. They have a digital tech. They have a lighting technician who works with them. They have the printers. They oversee. That's the new thing, is you oversee the printing of your show. Great. So people like, make it lighter. I want creamier. Oh, it's great. That's mark of an artist. That's great. So to me, I mean, what's so cool to me about the whole digital thing is, like, now there's an opportunity for a photographer to really be even more completely the author of his or her own work, because you can really control everything. So, and again, it's not like I'm a control freak in an anal way. It's just like I just got a much bigger sandbox to play in, and I want to do it. I like it. So anyway, a lot of these were done in these other ways. This was shot with a 4x5 camera several years later, and it was actually almost 10 years later, and it was shot actually in PLO headquarters in Gaza City. And this thing was shot with a little wooden 4x5, a little Deerdorf. And a big reason why I used to use those cameras, and a big reason why I miss them now, actually doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it's less grainy, the bigger pictures are less grainy, or any of that stuff. It's really a working method of working with people, and it's very deliberate when you work with a camera like that. It slows you down in a way that I actually like. It makes it all your decisions, you're more conscious of all the decisions you make, so I like that. But the truth is, when I first started working with those big cameras, I'd screwed up a lot. Not like the pictures were bad, but oftentimes I was just too slow, and it was like the operation was a success, but the patient died. You know what I mean? Like, I would have this perfect thing set up, and the person was so totally bored out of their skulls that it wasn't good. He looks a little bored here, but actually he's terrified. And but people, the thing with the big cameras is people are immediately engaged by them. And for a lot of the kind of people I shoot, who are politicians and CEOs and presidents and people like that, when they see a big wooden camera like that, they basically shut the hell up and sit straight, and that's good. That's actually useful. You know, if you're shooting them with a 35mm camera, it's like, oh, they gave their son one for his graduation present or something. You know, it's like it's not a big deal to them. And it's not like I know any more than the next photographer at all, but they think I do, which is good. And also to them, it's definitely an occasion. It's like you're treating them with a great deal of respect by going to all this effort. And most people respond to that. So it's and I actually miss that a lot, for sure. This was done last year, these cadets at West Point. And again, it was all, I'll tell you which ones are digital and which ones aren't. This is a digital picture, shot with the Canons. And this thing was shot with the light, the main light that's lighting these people is coming from a window. I brought the cloudy background as a backdrop that I hung. We're actually standing outside a men's room in a hallway at West Point. And there's just one light that I put up that actually is lighting the edge of their faces, and that's it. And it's one of those things that was set up very quickly, because we had to work quickly, and I could never have done it that quickly with a bigger camera, never. This, again, a tricky thing. One of the things I really enjoy about doing this kind of assignment work for time is that it's newsy. I mean, it's very topical. And in this case, they called me at like 10, 11 o'clock on a Friday morning, telling me that they had a go-ahead to shoot him at like 2 in the afternoon. So it's that quick. And it's in New York. It was in his office, his production office, which is uptown from where my studio is, which is downtown. And I just, you know, loaded all my stuff into a truck. I brought a whole bunch of stuff because, again, I didn't know what to expect. This was pre-digital for me. This was the summer before digital. And he had come out with his book, Fahrenheit 9/11. I mean, the movie, rather. I'm sorry, Fahrenheit 9/11. And one of the nice things about shooting these things for time is that I get a very free hand. They don't say, we want him to do this, and he has to be standing there, and he has to look this way, and you have to leave room for the time. It's very much like you have him at 2 o'clock for 20 minutes. We need the film on Saturday. That's kind of really what it is, pretty much. And it's up to me, which is what I really enjoy. And I work 10. The more I have to do, the harder I work at it. You know what I mean? Sort of like I can be doing ads where it's all specified, and then in a sense it's easier because I don't have to do as much. This kind of thing for me is fantastic. I have a very free hand. So what I wanted to do was, I felt like whether or not you agree with his politics personally, there's no question that he sees himself as a patriot for sure. And there's no question about like his sincerity about it. And whether or not you agree with him. And I want to get across a sense of his intensity about it and his feeling of his own sort of patriotism. And what I didn't want to do, though, was have the picture look self-aggrandizing in any way. Like I didn't want him wrapping himself in a flag. I didn't want it to be in any way disrespectful of the flag, that's for sure. So I had the idea of using a flag folded in this way, which is how it's presented to the families of soldiers who've been killed in the war. And I thought that would be a good way to present it. But so we went to an Army surplus store on the way up. We actually took the subway up there, and that's how little time we had. And we got a flag, but it, you know, folded. It ends up being like this big. It's a little too big. And I actually didn't want to see that much of him because he's a pretty big guy. It's like 300 pounds of love looking at you. So, and I didn't want to see that because kind of all you see when you see pictures of him is kind of like, you know, he's like a fat asshole in a baseball cap. You know, I mean, just that's what you get. And I didn't want to get that. We've already seen that, and I didn't think it was cool. I want to come in closer. So there's a little like antique shop near where my studio is, and I remembered seeing they had little flags in there, little old flags, tiny, like this big. And so I had my assistant go in there and pick up one of those, and we folded it like the other one, so it was the right size. We get to his office, and it's really humble. I mean, some guys like Martin Scorsese's production office uptown is in a beautiful building. The office is gorgeous. It has like huge framed vintage movie posters all over the place. It has this gorgeous screening room that's about half the size of this room with leather chairs. It's great. It's very, very beautiful. His place is like, doesn't even have his name on the door. It used to be, it still has whatever was there before. You walk in, there's like carpeting that's all trashed and folding tables all over the place with video cassettes strewn all over. I mean, the place is like a wreck, you know? And a lot of college kids around, they had a lot of interns working there. But it was like a little rabbit-warren of rooms, low ceiling. And the person there who was my contact says, oh, let me show you to Michael's office, that's where we'll be shooting it. He'll be here in about an hour, right? So they take me over, and they open the door in the office, no kidding, it's about 10 feet by 12 feet. And in it has a big desk, just a crappy desk, but a big desk that's piled with stuff. Across from the desk is a big, like a folding table that has editing equipment on it, computers and stuff. And then in another corner is like a love seat size sofa, that would seat two. And that's it. And they say, okay, do, you know, whatever you want to do, you can do. And it's like, wow, anything? Not be able to set it. Wow, that boggles the mind. What can you do? And there was literally no room. I mean, you had to walk around sideways in the space, small. So what we ended up doing was actually upending the sofa and took his picture in the footprint of where the sofa had been. And I brought with, we actually couldn't even bring the gear up from the truck because there was no place to put it even in the hallway. There was just no room. So I had a, like black velvet, like a 6 by 6 foot square of black velvet, thumbtacked it to the wall. There was like a corkboard thumbtacked it to that. And then I used one little, again, that actually not the same one, but a little fluorescent light source, small. That's the only light source, just the one thing. So everything else was dark. And it was photographed, I won't get into such technical detail on these because after a while, I don't know if it'll be so interesting. But this one I think is interesting because it was an unlikely choice of a portrait lens. This was shot with a Hasselblad with a 50mm lens, which is like shooting with a 35mm camera with maybe like a 28 or so. It's wide for a headshot. But if you're as big a guy as he is, it actually stretches him forward and actually makes him look nice. If you shoot him with a normal lens, it actually looks like you shot him with a single telephoto because his face is big and round. So it actually worked really well. And he's actually leaning way forward on a chair and he's holding the flag way, like in the most uncomfortable possible way. And he was dubious, for sure, because he's, you know, a lot of people don't like him. He thought, okay, I'm going to get screwed again. But I showed him a little Polaroid of it, and he liked it, and he got it. He got what I was doing, which is great. This was done, the one thing I love about this cover, this was shot in '91. It's not like they were planning the war back then or anything, were they? No, this just kind of cropped up. That's all right. But anyway, I had to do this picture of Paul and Cheney, and the one thing the magazine did want was two heads very, very close together. And these would have to be the two most homophobic men on earth, probably. So I didn't think it was really likely that I was going to get them kissing distance apart. So it was done as a double exposure on one piece of tune-quarter film. Again, this is kind of pre-Photoshop. So it was very tricky to do, but it worked out okay. This was when Bush was first being floated as a potential candidate. This was shot in the State House in Austin, Texas. And this was a picture I did of his dad. In '91, this was the Men of the Year thing. There's a whole long story with this, which I'll give you a briefer version of, which is the idea of the story was that he was sort of the magazine's thing was that he's sort of like this mixed message as a president because they saw him as a foreign policy visionary, but fairly ineffective domestically. So that's what they wanted to get across. It was like two different things. So I came up with the notion of doing this way. And again, this is pre-Photoshop. It's two exposures on one piece of 4x5 film, which is really, really tricky. And it took a lot of preparation in the studio. I spent a lot of time in the weeks preceding this, getting the lighting figured out, and getting it worked out so that basically when you combine the pictures together, it would look like one piece of meat, you know, look like one face. And we took very copious notes once we got it. And then we rented a studio in DC to use the day before the shoot. We actually had to shoot this at the White House. And we got the dimensions of the room we were going to be shooting in. It's called the map room. And we taped out on the floor of the studio the dimensions of that room. Then we rolled out seamless paper on the floor and we basically reconstructed the whole setup that I'd done in New York and made sure that we matched the picture. And then once we did that, instead of just having our notes, we actually took magic markers and literally outlined every single piece of equipment on the floor and wrote down what it was. Like, you know, guys did it on the garage wall with their tools and stuff, that kind of thing. Because I've been to the White House before, and oftentimes they'll promise you a lot of setup time, but between the bomb-sniffing dogs and security and this and that, you end up with no time. And this was not something that I could kind of be spontaneous about. It kind of had to really be very exacting. So I figured I would take the seamless trip. And sure enough, when we went there the next day, they promised us 2 hours of setup. We ended up with about 20 minutes because the bomb-sniffing dogs and all that stuff, the same thing. But we got into the room, and the first thing we did was roll out the seamless paper on the floor. We plonked down all the lights. We were ready for him when he walked in and took the pictures. So that was a cool thing. That's actually what the full transparency looked like. And an interesting thing was after, let me go back a second. I went to photograph him maybe 3 months later in March of that year for the LA Times. And I go to the security booth at the front of this thing. I have my assistants with me in like 30 cases a year. And the guy takes my social security number and stuff. And he says, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't let you in. Your clearance has been pulled." I said, "You're joking. I was just here, I mean, it was from December. I've been there a bunch the previous year. I photographed Mrs. Bush and James Baker and White House staff people and a fair bit of stuff there. So I really didn't get what was going on. I paid my taxes and stuff. So I asked him to run it through, and he said, "I'll check, sir." And same thing. He said, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. I just can't let you through. It's showing up negative." So I was standing there with the reporter. The writer was going to interview him. And there's nothing I could do. I just felt like an idiot. I packed up my, gathered my cases up, loaded them back in the truck, and went back to New York. And I asked the guy if he'd call me in the afternoon, just tell me what was up, if he could find out anything. He calls me at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon back in New York and says that Marlon Fitzwater was the president's press secretary at the time. And he said Fitzwater was really pissed. And he said the president was really steamed about that cover, so they pulled your clearance. And I really couldn't believe it. I just thought that, the leader of the free world, I thought had more important things to worry about than that. And plus, it wasn't me per se. Like if the story had been about how he's twice as great as any president we've ever had, he probably would have asked for a framed copy for the Oval Office. But because the nature of the story was what it was, that's how it came out. So it was very surprising to me that had happened. Again, I'd done pictures of Mrs. Bush that were like his favorite portrait ever of her. And I would no more expect to get invited up to Kennebunkport for a fun weekend with the family because he liked that than I would expect to get banned from the White House for this. You just wouldn't think so. But I tell people this is actually the only unretouched picture of George Bush. Normally you don't get to see the other face. But we made a quick sound, and he turned fast. I actually went there. I didn't get it back into the White House until Clinton was in. This was like several years later. And the first time I went there was to photograph Hillary. And it was interesting when I went in. A lot of the people that work in the White House, they're basically civil servants. They work there from administration to administration. The cooks, the cleaners, all the people that maintain the White House as a physical plant. And this one guy, I always wear like a bow tie and hat and all that stuff. And one of the chefs that was there recognized me from the phone. He said, "Hey, it's good to have you back. How you doing?" And I said, "Okay, pretty good, pretty good." And I said, I couldn't get in for a while. He says, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Some people can be so small. Oh, what are you going to do? They come, they go. Don't worry about it." This was another situation, a little bit like the Michael Moore one, where we had gotten a call on a Monday, I think, to shoot on Tuesday in Pennsylvania. This is when they first announced the ticket of the two of them, and they were going to do it they did do it at Teresa Heinz Carey's farm, or kind of house there in Pennsylvania. So we got everything all set to go. I had my assistants, same thing, all the stuff, truck ready to go, all the gear, take us to the airport. And the magazine called at 5 and says, "Oh, it's off. They can't do it. There just won't be any time. They'll have the news photographers shoot it, and we'll we'll use what we can. It just won't be a cover. That's the way it goes." Okay. So we returned all the rental gear. We let the assistants go home. Away go. And I was at the studio late that night with one of my assistants because we were editing film from another job. And at 8 o'clock, they called from the magazine. They said, "It's on." I said, "Well, the plane left 45 minutes ago." It's like, "We can't go." And they said, "Well, I mean, do you want to try?" And the truth is, like, we could drive there, It'd be a long drive, but we could do it. And I said, "Let me call you back in 5 minutes." And I sat there, and to be really honest, I was like the totally petty idiot photographer. I sat there thinking, like, "Well, they wouldn't make Annie do this at the last minute." Like that kind of stuff. But then I thought, you know what? Like, it's going to be more fun than whatever else I do tonight, for sure. So we did. And I called the assistants I sent home, I couldn't even get them on the phone, they were already out having beers. So I got hold of a couple of other people, we rented a van, we loaded up with the gear that I had at the studio, my own stuff, and we just drove straight through the night. And got to her farm at like 6:45 or 7 in the morning. And I literally like did the Zoolander thing, like, you know, pulling on underwear in the back of the van, sort of thing. And we got there and they showed it, and the stand where we were supposed to shoot them was actually at 7:30 before they went on television. So they showed us the garage at the house, and that's where they want us to set up like a little studio thing in the garage. And I didn't want to do that because I just thought it wouldn't look good, number one. And I also thought that her house is a beautiful big old farmhouse, and it had large white columns in front at the door. And I thought it would be great to shoot there because it was my personal little bias. I felt like I wanted it to look like they were already in office. I wanted to get the hint of like columns behind them. I thought that would be a good thing. And I wanted it to feel sunny, like a natural light, nice picture as opposed to a studio picture. So I thought it would convey like a naturalness that was nice. So I wanted to shoot in the front of the house, and their PR person said, "Oh, you can't shoot the front of the house because everybody will think it's like they're rich and big house and columns." And I said, "Well, she is rich. I don't think it's a secret." And I said, "Aren't the Bushes kind of rich? They're in the oil business, right? I don't think it's like a big. I mean, I know he's like just a regular guy, like any old guy, but it's like he's a zillionaire. I mean, it's not even like a question. They're rich. So what? No, you can't do it." So anyway, I explained it to her, same thing, and she finally let me shoot there. We had no time at all. We set up these lights. It's completely lit by strobe. There's no natural light except for the light that's hitting the columns in the back. And it's one of those things where you have to make decisions. It's all like every photograph is all about the decisions you make because every decision affects all the other decisions down the road. You know, if you decide to shoot an 8x10, that rules out a lot of things and it rules in certain things. If you decide you want to shoot outside, it rules out certain possibilities and it makes possibilities other things necessities. In this case, just for the cover, I felt like I wanted to have Carrie in the foreground on the right, because that's in a sense, the dominant position. And I wanted Edwards in the back and on the left. The problem is Edwards is much shorter than Carrie. And there was actually a Newsweek cover the same week by Brand X photographer, I won't say who. And it was a studio picture against the black background. It looked real cold and nothing. And he had Edwards in front of Carrie, and it just didn't look good, I thought. And it's one of those things where, like, the only way I can do it is to get apple boxes and have Edwards stand on them. And it's like, oh, what if he's pissed off, he's offended? It's like, I don't think it's any news to him that he's shorter than Carrie. He's been standing next to him for months. It's like, not like it's news. And I just said, again, I didn't lie. I just said, I want you to look the same height as he is. I don't want you to get very behind him. I want him in front because he's actually going to be the president, not you. This is what we need to do. You know, it's fine. And they said, yeah, sure, great, let's just do it. And then the biggest challenge after all that, after being off all night and getting the gear together and letting him shoot in front of the house and all that stuff, is that Carrie always has this look on his face like somebody just farted. Possible, most unfortunate thing. And I just didn't want that, you know. And he was, you know, said to be real stiff and all kind of stuff, and he just did. He just had that kind of horrible look. So I just started joking around. I don't even remember what I said, but Carrie said, "Well, it's a good thing there wasn't tape of this conversation." But it was good, and it was like literally I had them for I don't even think 5 minutes. I shot a roll and a half of 2 1/4 film, about like 18, 19 frames. That's all there was time for. But it was quick and it worked, and that's what was good. This was photographed at Clinton's house up in Chappaqua, New York. It was done on 8x10. It's actually about a 3/4 length picture. It's cropped in a lot. And I just wanted to see him and nothing else. And a very popular thing is shooting against white when you want to see nothing else. I prefer black because I think black isolates whatever it is you're looking at, and I think white is full of white. And to me, it's not empty. It ends up being full of white. So I don't like it as much. And again, same kind of thing. It's sort of just like very quickly establishing a rapport and chatting. Again, it's not like I'm chatting to him about world, you know, world politics or anything. It's just whatever. It's like small talk. This was my first foray into Photoshop. This was in 1992. Are you guys holding up okay? Yeah. So this is 92, and the deal with the Person of the Year thing is that it wasn't like Ted Turner's A Great Humanitarian. The notion was that it was as much, in a sense, awarding CNN like Medium of the Year or something, in a way, because it had literally redefined news. That was the year that it really hit, where instead of being what has just happened, all of a sudden news was what was happening right now. And that was a big change. So I came up with this concept of making a globe out of screen captures of different events that had happened during the year, and kind of surrounding him. That was the idea of it. So I photographed him in New York. Again, on 4x5, I probably shot a dozen frames of him. He's very impatient. He's kind of a dick, but sort of in a nice way. He's one of these guys where he just says, like, I hope this isn't going to take too long. And I said, look, don't worry, it's, you know, it's going to be a minute, I promise. He goes, 59, 59, 57, that kind of thing. You know, he's just like yanking your chain, but that's just the kind of guy he is. And I said, but you know, it's important. I want it to look right. It's for Time magazine. He said, nobody reads that damn magazine. And I said, well, didn't you just kind of bought them, right? I mean, you kind of, you know, you're with them now. It's part of the thing. He says, well, not for long. It's kind of funny. But anyway, so I didn't have a computer, none of this stuff. This is all when it was brand new. I'd been up to Maine maybe a couple months earlier, and Kodak, remember Kodak? They set up a computer imaging place up there called the Center for Creative Imaging, and it was really set up to kind of allow professionals to get acquainted with the digital world. And I'd been up there at this invitational, and there were Jay Maisel was there were other photographers, Milton Glaser, a designer, was there, and none of us knew anything about it, like non-techie people at all. I mean, I remember they asked Milton Glaser, what was your familiarity with computers? And he said, I pointed at them. You know, that was about it. So, but I have to say, I thought it was amazing. And I felt this would be a good way to do it, for sure. So I went back up there and I worked with this woman who was actually an intern there. She had just graduated from like RIT, I think, and she was there as an intern. And I worked with her on this thing for like 2 weeks, right? And it was the most frustrating experience of my whole life, for sure. It literally, I've since kicked it, I took up smoking when I was up there. Because you'd have to wait so long for that rotten little thermometer to fill up, right, when it was like thinking or spherizing or doing something. And after a while, I'd like eaten sandwiches and had a cup of coffee and bitten all my nails down to the cuticle. And the only thing left was smoking, so I tried that. And it just was frustrating. Like you'd spend so much time on something, then you'd wait literally sometimes an hour for it to complete an operation. And then you'd come back and it had crashed. It like scratched it or something like that, you know. It was really frustrating. And at the end of that 2 weeks, I was happy with what I'd come up with. But I just, you know, to myself said, I'm not going to use this computer stuff for a long time. Definitely not going to use it, so you can just go like, darker, and the picture gets darker. Like that was like, I didn't want to even think about any of the other stuff. Like when it gets to that point, then I'll get interested. This was done right after 9/11. And again, I could have kind of shot it any way I wanted to. I scouted all around Lower Manhattan, the site, you know, around Ground Zero. I didn't want to shoot at the site. I just felt it was, frankly, just kind of inappropriate. And when I talked to Giuliani's people, they were happy about that because he felt like it was sacred ground, and they didn't want him to use it in a self-aggrandizing way and that kind of thing. Although this isn't self-aggrandizing pictures, but in a different way. And I went everywhere. I mean, I scouted Lower Manhattan from New Jersey and from Brooklyn and from Staten Island and every vantage point. And it just didn't look like anything. I mean, it looked like Milwaukee or something. It just didn't look like New York without the towers there. So I ended up going up to Rockefeller Center. There's the Rainbow Room is this restaurant club that's there, and they used to have an observation deck there. I think they have it again now. I haven't been there since I shot this. But at that time, it was closed down. It was all being remodeled. And I thought that would be a good place because I remember being there. And what's cool about the view is you're kind of in it. In the World Trade Center, you were above everything. Here, you're sort of in it. And when you were standing there, the Empire State Building is there, and then actually the World Trade Center would have been right behind where he's standing. That's where it would be if you were standing. And I called, and they're like, no, you can't shoot here. I don't know, you know, it's been closed. Nobody's allowed up here. So I called Giuliani's office to see if they knew anybody, and they said, oh, don't worry, we'll put in a call and see what happens. 2 minutes later, the same guy calls and says, oh, Mr. Heisler, no, come on up, it's fine. It was like 5 o'clock, and I said, are you sure? I don't want to hold it. No, we're here. We got plates fine. No, have the electrician stay over. Overtime's not a problem. No, that's fine. So it was great. Went up there, scouted around, and it was a big job. I mean, it was the picture I wanted was this picture. I could kind of just see it in my mind's eye. And it's the kind of thing where, again, I just did furious testing. Like I took 2 1/4 cameras up there, 4x5, 8x10 up there, and to see if it was going to be worth doing the 8x10, because there's the misery factor. Like once you decide on 8x10, you won't be able to shoot many frames, the lights have to be stronger. You know, it's a whole issue, a lot of issues there. But in the end, it was shot on 8x10, and the reason for that was I wanted to be able to play with the focus, plane of focus. And the plane of focus, you can see, kind of passes through him and through the Empire State Building on a diagonal. And to our right, as we're looking at the picture, the background goes way out of focus and it kind of separates him, it pulls him forward. That's something that you could do in a different way in Photoshop now. That was not my expertise, so I would never have been able to do that then. But I don't know, for whatever reason, it's probably silly, but there's sort of a degree of difficulty thing that I get a kick out of, where it's sort of like, you know, one hand tied behind your back kind of thing. So if I can get, and even now with Photoshop, to the greatest extent that I can get something complete on a piece of film, I'd rather, or complete in a digital capture, I'd rather, so I don't have as much to deal with later. I'd rather, the thing tends to organically just work together better. So that's why I used the 8x10, was to get the background out of focus, because it was shot with a very wide angle lens. And a very wide angle lens on a smaller camera, everything's always in focus. That's just the way it is. The tough part was, he was standing up on this parapet that was probably a little higher than this podium, this table, and probably a little bigger, a little wider. So, and it was solid. I mean, it was, what he's standing on was the parapet of the building. It's not going anywhere. But behind him, it drops down like 3 floors to a terrace, a setback, and then after that, it's like 60 floors down. So even though it wasn't so far, it wouldn't have been good if he fell over. But, and like I said, the thing itself was like this high off of the roof, sort of. About 4 feet maybe, something like that, 4.5 feet. So it's not all that high, but the truth is I don't like heights. And when I was standing up there, it felt freaky to me. I didn't like it. It's like my eyeballs all of a sudden are, you know, 10 feet off the ground and they're not happy there. So I felt like if I'm not going to like it, he's not going to like it. It's a big, big, big thing that to me is always a consideration when I'm doing portraits. I'm always, 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 always trying to anticipate how will the subject respond to this situation. Whether it's the heights, the brightness of the lights, what's it like being photographed with 4x5 instead of 2 1/4, what's it like? I mean, all those things are issues, I think. And they're huge, 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 huge things to think about. And in this case, I just thought, you know, if he says no, I'm screwed. So I have to somehow make it okay. And what we did is, I had a platform, just a plywood platform made that was maybe a foot lower at most than that stone parapet he's standing on, and it's about 12 by 12 feet. So from where he's standing, he's looking at a big area to step down onto that's like 12 inches lower than where he is. It feels really safe. It's not so safe if he falls over backwards, but unless we ran up and pushed him, he wasn't going to fall over backwards, he was fine. But when you stood there, you felt totally at ease. And I'm freaky about heights, so it was totally fine. Totally fine. And it's exactly what happens. Like he got there, he just jumped up there and said, "Oh, this is great," and we took the picture. It was quick. So it worked out well. That's actually the picture itself. And again, it's lit to death. I mean, there are strobes I have on those lower terraces with green gels on them. The reason they have green gels is to mimic the light, the kind of fluorescent color of the light that comes from the buildings, right? And the light should come from below. I mean, I hate to be a pill, but like I'm a big enemy of like octabanks and things like that, because I just feel like these huge softbox light sources is what people get into a rut using. And in the end, when you walk around in the world, you don't see big octabanks everywhere as light sources. Like you kind of never see them, basically. And there's no reason why there would be such a light source on a roof like that. It just wouldn't make sense. And again, you know, it's like you can look through Vanity Fair and like every picture is pretty much lit the same. Like they're all lit the same. They're all different pictures, but they're all pretty much lit the same. Like most pictures are lit the same, which is a big softbox overbalanced with the daylight, or a big softbox in a concert hall, or a big softbox, you know, an octabank in a rehearsal room. Whatever it is, it's kind of always that, and I just think it's not so super interesting. So I would rather have the picture, for me, look like it's ambient light. And to me, this looks like it's ambient light. It looks like the lighting that might have been there. So that's a big thing. This totally unnatural thing, this is a Person of the Year, David Ho. He was a leading AIDS researcher. The tough part here is that nobody knows who he is. I mean, to look at him, no one would know him. So what I did is got hold of a photomicrograph of an AIDS virus, had it blown up onto what's called a Duratrans, it's like a bus shelter, like a big transparency, and actually taped that to the front of a light box, a soft box, and that's actually what's lighting. He's actually being lit by the transparency. And I got glasses made that match his own frames, but I had mirrored lenses put in. That way it would reflect the thing with more intensity. So that was pretty simple. A big thing you'll notice with these time covers, just as a thing, is that with the exception of a few like Giuliani, almost all of them are headshots. They love big headshots. And it's such a limiting format because there's only so much you can do with a head. You know what I mean? It kind of is what it is. So to me, the lighting is what really shapes these pictures and tries to separate them out. This was the three women that were the whistleblowers from WorldCom, FBI, and Enron. They had to be photographed in Minneapolis. We had to shoot on a racquetball court, and because it was the only place that we could shoot. And just a tricky picture. This was one of my first attempts doing Photoshoppy stuff, kind of mapping a chip onto his face. I've done 4 covers now. Bill Gates has been on a cover of Time 4 times. That was the first time, that was the second time. That was last summer. And then the most recent one is the one with Bono. This I'm just showing to show you I photographed everybody. Just, everybody else has their celebrities, but I don't know. Actually, it was funny because they had this illustration on the left that they had done, and they wanted it contrasted with a supposedly real person. And I have this guy I know who actually we always used to joke that he looks just like Jesus, so I asked him if he would pose and he was happy. This was done, it doesn't show as well here, it doesn't, I'm sorry to say, but it's actually shot with an 11x14 camera. About 15 years ago, I bought an 11x14 camera to shoot 11x14 film because I wanted to make platinum prints, and platinum prints are a contact printing process. So whatever size the negative is the size of the print you're going to get. So I wanted bigger negatives without enlarging the negatives. So I wanted to use this big camera. And so I started for a while taking it around in all the shoots, and whenever I could, I would try and do a picture for myself with it. And in this case, we shot all transparent medium format transparencies in his house and all these different setups we did for the cover. And really just as a last afterthought, as we were leaving, I asked if he would mind terribly if we just took a few frames on the front porch, and that's what we did. It ended up that that's what they ran, which was amazing. Very unusual. This was just great to shoot. It was amazing meeting him. It was just so freaky to think that they're, see that old head popping out of a spacesuit, and to think that that the space program's even that old is amazing. It reminds me of the last scene in 2001 when Keir Dullea is an old man. This was challenging because this was obviously after his accident, and it was photographed in a hotel room. It was a painted backdrop, and again, I was lighting it to make it feel like sun. Like it's outdoor, I wanted it to feel sunny. All the pictures you saw of him for 10 years were pictures of him in the wheelchair, and all you see really is the wheelchair in a sense. And I want to get a feeling for him. His kind of vitality is still there. This is when David Lynch did Twin Peaks. And there were a lot of weird pictures being done of him, like holding a chainsaw or with weird stuff going on. And I wanted the weirdness to come from him. So again, this is double exposure on one piece of film of, he's lit with 2 different kind of light sources, and for one frame he's looking away, and for the other frame he's looking at the camera. It just is strange. He liked it. This one, again, the light source is very much dictated by what the scene is. And in this case, actually, the lights are bounced off the movie screen because she would be lit by the movie screen. And it's kind of bluish because it probably gives that feeling of that. You know what I mean? If it was warm looking, I think it would probably just look like a softbox or something, actually. And she's a great actress, and she acted like she was watching a movie. She was funny, though, because she had to have the glasses. She said, whenever I play a hooker, they always have me without glasses. Whenever I'm an attorney or something like that, I always wear glasses. I figure it gives me another 20 points of IQ, so. He was great to shoot. Springsteen's terrific. He's exactly what you'd hope he'd be. He's like really friendly, very down to earth, just a really nice guy. This picture, when I go to do a shoot like this, this was one that I'd actually set up in my little studio ahead of time, because I like to have one thing that I know that even if everything screws up, I'll still have a picture. So, again, kind of the lowest denominator thing. So this is a picture I knew I could set up in a space that was like 6 feet by 8 feet in case we were stuck shooting in his kitchen, or like, who knows, you just never know. So we had that figured out. And then we went to his house. I called ahead of time, and he just released his Rising album. And I was hoping we could photograph maybe in the where he records there. And his publicist said, "Oh, no, we're not shooting actually at his home, at that home. It's not, we're not shooting at his house that he lives in." That's what she said. "We're not shooting at the house that he lives in." And I was just silent, and I said, "Well, we're shooting like in his photo house? I don't know, like, maybe when you get to that point, you have like a photo house, just for photos. I don't know." And she said, "Well, kinda. It's kinda like that." He's apparently bought up a bunch of farms around where his house is in Jersey. And this is one of the other houses, it's a photo house. And it's more like where, like members of the band will stay if they're over, you know, that kind of thing, I guess. But it's like a photo house. I'll show you, the other pictures come up later. This was Jackie Joyner-Kersee. She's terrific. This was during the '88 Olympics, just before. And most of the pictures that were being done at that time were a lot of kind of like very retro looking, sort of body, beautiful black and white, nude, semi-nude kind of things. That was kind of very much what was going on then. And I didn't like that stuff because I figured like it's, what she's amazing at is as an athlete. Like that's her thing. You know, she's not a figure study, she's an athlete. So I watched a bunch of videos of her competing in different meets, and I was able to freeze frame them and make little printouts, and I printed out this exact frame from a competition she'd been in. We shot this in a gymnasium in Seattle with a painted background. And I literally just brought the little picture with me and said, like, "Can you do that?" And she did, and it, you know, worked out fine. It was fine. This was funny. This was the next Olympics. And this guy was training outside of Laughlin, Nevada. Arizona? Laughlin. Where is it? Arizona. Anybody know?
Laughlin's in Nevada.
Nevada, okay, thanks. And I mean, it had to be over 100 degrees. It was really, 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 really hot, which is why he was training there. We went out into the desert outside the city. We found this track that looks like it goes on forever. And we were setting up our lights, and I asked him if he could maybe just, you know, jog around a little bit just to sort of work up a sweat. And he just nodded, and he padded off down this thing, and it was like an hour later. And my assistant and I were dying, like our tongues were hanging on the ground, our guzzling water, and it's, I mean, it's so hot, you know. We couldn't even run the car because we figured it would overheat, the air conditioning. Finally, it said, I'm crouching on the ground, looking at a Polaroid, and all of a sudden I see I'm in a shadow, and I look over, and he's there, and he's standing in place, dry as a bone, and cool as a cucumber. And I look over, and he just says, "I do not think it is working." He just ran for like an hour. This, I told my wife, this guy's a freak man, don't look like that. But again, it's kind of like the Giuliani thing, like I wanted the lighting to feel like it's pool light, like it's coming from the pool. You know what I mean, like pool lighting? And we weren't going to be able to shoot him at a pool, because we just weren't going to have access to him. We shot him out in Palo Alto. And this is one of the things where I spent all weekend in the studio trying stuff out. And I actually rented this backdrop. It's a painted backdrop. And it looked like a painted backdrop. So again, on this one, I ended up working with it on 8x10 because by tipping the lens, I was able to throw it more and more out of focus as it got more towards the top. And it made it feel like the water's receding away from you, sort of. And again, the lighting was to match kind of the glow of the pool. And we ended up doing it in New York, writing everything down, going to Palo Alto, renting a photographer studio there and setting it all up, matching it, that's what it was. But it's, again, it's kind of like justified by that. You know, and for me, as you notice in these pictures, I don't really care much about white light because that's, to me, it's not interesting, and light's rarely white. You know, the light that's coming up from here isn't white. The light from the pool wouldn't be white. You know, that's what gives the picture its depth, sort of. This was last summer. This is my oldest daughter, Lucy. She's been on the cover of Time 3 times. Yeah. And she looks completely different now. Being 14 is very different from being 13. I'll tell you that. She's completely a changed person. It's amazing. This is hard to get a horse to smile, but this was just frankly luck. I was photographing Smarty Jones, and he just, whatever he's doing, he's like licking his chops or something, and it looks like this. These were done on 8x10 Polaroid, like cross-processed 8x10 Polaroid. A, because it was on a deadline, I had to have the picture to them that afternoon. And B, I just thought it would look nice. It'd be like a throwback to kind of classic horse racing. These are pictures of Terrell Owens. I've shot him a couple times now, and this was the first time. It was in San Francisco. And the guy's amazing looking. I mean, he has muscles in places most people don't even have places to have muscles in. He's like, you know, he doesn't even have useless shit like intestines or pancreas or anything. You know what I mean? It's like, no, unnecessary stuff. He and Carl Lewis, probably the most amazing bodies I've ever seen on a person. Like, they literally look like a medical diagram, like with skin vacuum formed over, where you just literally see the little striations, the muscles and stuff. And again, this is shot in the locker room. You know, it's just, these things are really, you know, it's kind of fun. This was shot on a racetrack, and his car showed up late, and it didn't have any gas. So we just had to shoot a still picture. This is before the car came. We were supposed to shoot a dust picture, so at least I photographed him at dust. These are just some ESPN covers I'll go through quickly. This is funny. A-Rod's a perfectly nice guy. I was shooting with a wooden 4x5, and his way of making small talk, as a friendly guy that he is, so what's a camera like that cost? About like $50,000? And I was like, well, for you today, sure. I mean, I'm kind of attached to it. I couldn't believe that's the first number he'd come up with. Like 50,000, like what number, why would you think of that number casually? Like, is that like, what is that, like a ring or something? Or like, what is it, you know, what, it's like 50,000. Yeah, no, I mean, no, his is probably 150 because it's custom. Amazing. This story of Muhammad Ali I did for Sports Illustrated in 87, 88, right around the beginning of the year. And it completely changed my whole career. Because up till that point I was doing a lot of work for Life magazine, a lot of corporate work, none of which I'm actually showing in here because it's all kind of prehistoric work for me in a way. Everything I'm showing you, this would probably be the oldest picture in there. That's from 87. So I've been working maybe for 10 years up to this point. And all the stuff I'd done was all color. I was like kind of really a color guy, and I was hired mostly to be a problem solver, you know? And I got tired of it, because basically when you're hired to be a problem solver, what you tend to get lots of is problems. And it's a drag, you know? I would spend so much effort trying to make something that was really horrible look okay. And when I got this assignment, what was great about it was they wanted it in black and white, which I couldn't believe. And I was able to use kind of everything I've learned about lighting in a quieter way, just more for emotional ends, instead of technical problem solving. So, this one especially is a real favorite. This was shot on his farm. He lives on Al Capone's old farm up in Michigan, in the middle of winter. We shot there. This is his masseur, day-to-day travel with him. An interesting thing, I was actually just reading this morning, I'm reading a book by Sidney Lumet, the film director, called Making Movies. And one of the first things he says in the book, the whole book is about the process of making movies, what's involved. And people have all kinds of romantic notions of what's involved and how creative it is, which he all agrees it is. But he said that he was once talking with Akira Kurosawa, director, Japanese film director, and he was asking him about a scene, a battle scene, I think, in Ran, this movie. And he always loved the framing of it, and he was asking him how he arrived at that framing. And Kurosawa said that if you panned the camera an inch to the right, you'd see the Sony factory. And if you panned it an inch to the left, you could see the airport. And like that's why it was there, it was a period movie. That's why the framing was what it was. You know, like you never know. And in this case, for me, he almost didn't agree to be photographed. He actually had a lip infection, and his lip was swollen way, way out. And so I told him he could actually, you know, cover his face, work with his hands that way, and that's the only reason I got this picture. You know, and it's not a thing I probably would ever have done otherwise. So like you never know what will precipitate the good picture. And I have to say that's another thing, like learning from assisting, is I work with a bunch of photographers who are actually really, really good, but a lot of them were kind of, it was a little disappointing, like the pictures that they were famous for weren't the pictures they took every day. Like maybe that would be once a year, that kind of picture. And the rest of the time they're just kind of whacking it out. Or a lot of times they go on a shoot, and if they weren't excited about it, then they just kind of, you know, clock in and clock out. Or worse, like if they went there to take a sunny picture and it was cloudy, they just like moan and groan and not take a good picture, not take a picture. And it seemed like, to me, like that's kind of what you should be able to do, is pull it off no matter what. Like if it's cloudy, then take a good cloudy day picture or whatever. And this is a situation where I've definitely gone in with a very different image preconceived. But being able to just let go of that and see what's there in front of you and actually make the most of what's there is a really useful way to work. Again, this is like this is shot in a jail cell. They brought his son in. These are a bunch of sports pictures. I'll just whip through them for Sports Illustrated. This was shot in the studio, but I wanted to feel like she was out on the track at night. This was in a studio shot on infrared film, Carl Lewis, Edwin Moses, Greg Louganis. That's kind of an interesting thing. These three pictures, the last three I showed, were all done for a life story on Olympic athletes who won the gold in '84, who are going back to try and get it again in '88. And one thing that's really a sore point with me, with a lot of photographers, is that in terms of good business practices, but actually just being like a human being, is so often I go on shoots, because what I do, I photograph people most of them. And so often I feel like I'm the first guy to show up after the date rape. Like I'm the guy with the bow tie and flowers, you know, knocking on the door and it's like, ah, oh, another one of you assholes. And I feel like I'm constantly following the footsteps of photographers that suck. Like photographers that didn't deliver the pictures they promised the subject prints that they gave them, said it would take 15 minutes, it took 2 hours, shot 3 more setups so they could have them for their syndication and stock, but it really wasn't necessary and the person got the stuff. Like it's a million things like that, a million. Left cigarette burns in the carpet, I mean anything. And all these things have happened, I can promise you. And it's very upsetting because, you know, you feel like you're battling an uphill battle. And especially with celebrities now, it's worse than ever because we're following the footsteps of all the people you know. And they're sick of it. Like most celebrities are sick of it. It's like, I feel like I have to show up with an idea because that's the least I can do in a way. But now it's like, oh, so your Friday's great idea. Well, okay, what's your idea? Like I was shot by Thursday's great idea, yesterday, Wednesday's idea. Before they get Friday, I say, lay it on me. What do you want me to do, lay in a tub of milk? Great. No, what do you want me to do? I'm serious. I'm absolutely serious. People are like, they've had it, you know? And I feel like I'm glad these other people got their pictures, but I'm screwed. And I super am not appreciative of it. And I think it's tough because I'll get the same person that was laying in a tub of milk and I'll say, gee, can you lean forward a little bit for the light? And it's like, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Well, you just had your butt hanging out for a picture a week ago. How come you can't, you know, I mean, it's that kind of thing. And it's very irritating. So I would ask everybody to be really, really careful when they photograph people and know that they're not the only ones that are ever going to do it, and to be a little bit considerate of their subjects. Because it's a huge thing, and I think that even spills over into business in a big way. I mean, Alex and I were talking about this last night, but so often, if you're working for an ad agency or a client or a magazine that lays this horrible contract on you that you have to sign, they're not doing it because the legal department just has fun sitting up nights thinking of horrible ways to screw photographers. 99% of the time, the reason they've come up with something like this is because some photographer screwed them over. They used a picture before they were going to, they resold the picture before it was time, they nailed them for extra costs, who knows what it was. But almost every time there's some very restrictive arrangement like that, it's in response to some photographer that did something. And I hate that. You know what I mean? And the legal department just said, look, we're never going to have to deal with this anymore. Just make them sign it or don't work with them. So you have to really be aware of that. I think it's key. It's really, really, really key. And yeah, so I offered it. It's an important thing. Everybody holding up okay still?
Yeah.
All right? Okay. So a big thing I try to do when I'm on location especially is I try really hard to think of the picture I'm not taking, the picture I'm missing. I try really hard to think of it while I'm still there because I've had this bump on my forehead from being on airplanes for 30 years and going like that. And I just hated it. So just as an exercise, as corny as it sounds, oftentimes I'll try and think of the opposite picture to the picture I'm taking. If I'm shooting from a low angle, I'll try and imagine a high angle. If I'm shooting with a wide angle, I try to think of a telephoto shot. If I'm shooting a backlit, I think of a frontlit. It could be anything, but just to shake it up, because sometimes you get somewhere and you have a very strong preconception of what you want to do, or because you're forced by the situation, the circumstances, into shooting a certain way, you kind of lose sight of any other possibilities that might be there. Maybe you got rattled by it. I mean, it happens all the time. So I try really hard to do that. And these are an example where we had very little time because of conflicts that were happening there, scheduling conflicts. So there are 3 very different pictures shot in the same space with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in a span of about 15 minutes. Was this picture, then this picture, which was the cover, and that picture was shot like just behind me, sort of just behind where I was standing. So it's that picture, and then this picture, which is literally looking from a catwalk down at the 20-yard line, which is, you can see is right here's the 20-yard line in the foreground. So it's 3 different ways to use the same setup and try to think of very different pictures to work with. Again, this is about working in hard environments. That Bill Parcells is the coach of the Jets, New York Jets. Went out to their practice facility, and the room they gave me to shoot in, no kidding, was where the Xerox machine was. It was a room that I'm not exaggerating. It was probably 6 feet by 8 feet, or 8 feet by 8 feet, something very small, with Xerox machines and copiers and fax machines in it, and extra reams of paper, that kind of stuff. And it was very tight. Again, this is where I used that little fluorescent light on him. And I actually just put a piece of black foil behind him, like black, it's like a black aluminum foil, just to make a horizon line, because it just gives it depth a lot. I think it's one of those things like if you just block it out with your hands, it looks like a nice studio picture. Just as soon as you have the horizon in there, it just feels like there's space. This was a story for ESPN on football teams that use very kind of primitive training techniques, like in the year of sports medicine and all this high-tech stuff, these guys like throw beer kegs around. This was a story, they had the idea at ESPN of using cars as metaphors for the kind of football players that these guys are. I didn't fully understand that. This was funny. This was Ricky Williams and Mike Ditka. And I grew up in Chicago, so Ditka's reputation was really familiar to me. But this was funny because it was the first time he really, in a sense, openly declared his love for a football player as being that important to him. And what the magazine wanted was a picture that was like American Gothic, pitchfork, that kind of thing. And that picture gets copied all the time. And I hate when people ask me to copy a picture and I just don't do it. You know, it happens in advertising all the time where somebody will walk in with a picture that they've already sold to the client that got torn out of something, what they call swipe. And they'll say, well, we need to shoot this. And I'll just say, like, I don't look good in stripes, man. Like, I kid, I don't look good in stripes. Like, I'm not going to prison over this. Not, like, you can't do it. It's illegal. It's not like I don't want to do it. It's against the law. We can't do it. So, well, look, you can shoot this, and then you can do anything else you want. It's like, I can't do it. You don't get it. It's like, I can't do it. I can't. It's illegal. I might as well shoot you. I'll shoot you now. That's illegal too. I can't do it. Let's rob a bank. We can do that too. Let's copy this picture and then rob a bank. You know, it's like, you just can't do it. And it's funny because it's even in the business. Like our directors will say, you know, I'm looking for some ideas for a picture. Well, you can't look for ideas. You have to think of ideas. If you're looking for ideas, that's plagiarism. You're not supposed to look for ideas. You're supposed to think of ideas. It's hard. You know, we were talking about last night. Like people always say, oh, you know, I always wanted to use you. It's all the same. I just would not get used. Like, I want to work with you, that would be okay. Yeah, no, I always want to use you. Okay. So anyway, so I had the idea to do this. We shot it in New Orleans. I wanted to look like a wedding picture, really like a fancy wedding picture. Shot on 8x10. We got the dress made for Ricky. Ditka was okay as long as he was the guy in the tuxedo. And it's funny, we shot like, again, 8 or 10 frames, not much. And Ditka all of a sudden just bolted. He just said, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't think I want to do it. And I said, well, it's a little late. We start shooting, might as well finish. You okay? Yes? Yes? I'll go quick and we'll leave him.
Let's take a quick poll, though. Raise your hand if you think you'll have a question for Greg, so you just kind of judge how long it might take. I guess we've got more time than we thought.
No, I'll zip through. That's fine. I tend to go on. So, anyway. This was one of my first photoshopping things when I started doing it. And we had to shoot Allen Iverson, went down to Philly to shoot him 3 times and got stiff 3 times. Waited all day in the cold, in the winter, outside, with a truck. we rented this Viper, this car, and a truck to tow it around, so we could take pictures of a minute, and he stiffed us 3 times. And the third time, because it cost a lot of money to rent this truck to tow the car around, so we just had the truck tow the empty car around, and I took those pictures, just so we'd have that done. And then when we went back to shooting like 2 weeks later, I physically parked the car at the training facility in between the exit door and his Bentley, so he'd have to like walk over the car to get to his car. And he agreed to sit in for a minute, and I had the camera on a tripod, and I wanted to look like he was taking his own picture with a point and shoot, so that's why it was like that. And it was a real easy thing to put the 2 pictures together because it exactly matched, so it's fun. So the car he's in is obviously sitting still. But it's not like Photoshop motion blur, it actually was a blurry picture of the car. Again, that's one of those things where if I can, I'd rather try and get as much of it organically happening. It just works better. I'll just sit through some of these. This was a thing for Sports Illustrated on point guards from New York City. The Rich and Back book. A friend of mine wrote these 2 books, and I thought it would be fun. Just 2 basketball players. Again, this is just an example of the light, justifying where the light's coming from, justifying the color of the light. This was actually this is from that first story I did for ESPN of the basketball players where I used the digital. This was like the first week from that shoot. And this guy shot this picture and this picture probably, I don't know, 45 minutes apart from each other. It looks like it's sunset, but it's actually not that late. It's just, you know, from exposure it looks like that. But basically I was able to do that and this within, 30 minutes. We actually had time to shoot this, drive to another location, get that set up and shoot it digitally. I could never have done that before. Again, this is from the same story. He's a basketball player. This is out of Stanford. What I like about this is, I'm shooting with a 28mm perspective control lens, but a 28mm lens on the ground with a right angle little finder so I can look through. I wouldn't have been able to, I just never would have thought of that point of view with a big camera. A lot of my pictures I was shooting with 2 1/4 tended to be a person in the middle of a rectangle. You know what I mean? It's like camera's on a tripod. You tend to shoot a certain kind of way. And I love shaking it up like this. Same thing again. This guy, I probably shot 6 different things in the span of an hour. I shot here, I shot across the street, I shot it when the neon lights came on and this thing. So easy. It was just fun. It was actually made it fun. I was walking backwards shooting. It's just loose, that kind of thing. This thing, again, he's lit with a strobe that's actually gelled to match. So it looks like it's coming from neon or other stuff going on, but it's, I shot high, low, different variations quickly. It was easy. This is Alonzo Mourning's another amazing looking guy, and it was just, this picture I'd actually done an 8x10 in the studio ahead of time and just replicated it in a locker room. For this one, I actually had the chair made for Shaq. It was right at the beginning of his career, and all the stories were about how big he was. And I thought it'd be funny to do like the Lily Tomlin thing. So there's a model maker, a builder we'd worked with for advertising stuff, and I brought him a director's chair at 5 o'clock the night before, and at 7 in the morning he had this ready to go. And we took it on a plane. Flew down to Orlando. These are just, again, covers for ESPN. These are, again, ESPN stuff. Golfers. I'm just going to zoom through these.
Since we have no questions, we just take them.
No. I mean, there's 600 more pictures. This was just, again, a practice putting green. I just like the fact that the flag was low. It made it that much bigger. This I like a lot. Again, this was shot in a hotel ballroom. Just because of the place we had to shoot him in, that was it. But I wanted to look like sunlight. I wanted to look like we were outdoors. And it's just a bare light bulb. This is like a bare head. It doesn't even have a reflector on it, strobe head, because the sun's 93 million miles away. It's a point source. So there's no reason for it to be soft. So it's just literally this one bare, lonely little strobe head up there bouncing around. But to me, it feels just like sunlight. And that's what I like about it. And then this was done with 8x10, like this one, for example, and this one. The 8x10 ones, I think you can even see they're quieter. You know what I mean? The whole camera, the whole way of working, it's quieter. And I just like it a lot. It's just a different way of doing stuff. It's it's just, you know, it just slows the whole process down in a way that's nice. This was actually shot on the rooftop of a studio in Colorado. You know, again, trying to figure out a good thing that matches the personality of the guy. Cal Ripken's like, you know, a classic, steady Eddie, good guy, baseball player. So I just wanted to do this kind of feeling. There's a rental studio that has the perfect, quintessential Northlight skylight. You know, just, that's it. The only thing that I like about this picture, there's two little things I like. I mean, the light's nice and all that, but that's the window. I just like that he did that little thing with his foot. It's the one thing that brings the picture to life instead of him just standing there. And I also like the mirror in the background. That was something I put in. If you block out the mirror, the picture becomes a lot more flat in a way. And I just like that. It just adds another piece to it. Nice. Again, this is surprising. The reason I showed this is it was shot with a 5x7 view camera on the Staten Island Ferry. And surprisingly, again, it's another reason I like using big cameras, is that, and this is really an important consideration, is if you think about it from the subject's point of view, if you're shooting with a 35mm SLR, it's hard to have a conversation when you're standing like this, and the camera's up here, there's not much to look at, it's kind of hard. And if you're using like a Hasselblad, you're talking into your shoes like this, and you're kind of mumbling down there. Seriously, if you're using a view camera, what happens is you've composed the picture, you look through the blind glass, you close the shutter, the film is in it, and now you're just standing here, and the camera's here. So all of a sudden you can just talk directly to the subject. And even though the camera's a big-ass camera there, they're almost less aware of it in a funny way, because you're actually communicating directly, which is pretty cool. And in this case, the view camera's on the tripod. I would never have caught this picture. This was just I mean, I was shooting the picture of the guys, and it was just happenstance. But I saw her walking in the frame, and I was able to get it. If I was shooting through the lens, by the time I saw it, she'd have been gone, or blocking one of the guys. You know, it's such a great thing. You know, and I would say now, one of the things I do a lot, even with the 35, the Canons, or with a Hasselblad like H1 if I'm using that, is I work with the cable release and I stand next to the camera. I do that a lot. In fact, I don't own the H1 because it's $500,000 and the backs are $3 billion. So I rent those if I need them. But the one thing I can never get is the cable release. Nobody ever has it. And when you go to rent it, they always give you the one for the old Hasselblads that doesn't fire it. So I just spent $80 for a Hasselblad cable release that's about this long. And that's the one piece of Hasselblad equipment I have. Because I do have a toilet. This, again, it's like it was shot indoors at Yankee Stadium. And the idea was to have it look like it's outside in the sun. And the lighting is to look sunny. You know, if it's overfilled, it wouldn't look like sun. You know, if the main light is a soft light, it wouldn't look like sun. This is just for an ad campaign for rescuing little greyhounds. This was a series of Nike ads that we did. It was for brochure and like window displays. It was really cool. This is, again, I've learned a ton of stuff, tons, shooting stills on movie sets or stills on commercials, because there you see when there's like no holds barred, tons of equipment, tons of helpers, tons of extra hands, and you see how people work. It's great. And I can tell you on movie sets, you'll never find an aquabank. Never. Like every great movie that's ever been done, The Godfather, they don't have aquabanks. They don't use them. You know, like they use hard lights, they put lights through things, they infuse them. They don't have like formulaic things like that. And so anyway, I was shooting stills on a commercial. And they had the Yankees and the Mets playing stickball in Harlem, which was just a cool thing. So I was using a handheld 4x5, an SLR, because I didn't want to shoot sports pictures. I wanted to have them look like funky snapshots, in a sense. I wanted like non-sports pictures. So that was one. This is another. You know, it's kind of like, as my daughter would say, random pictures, you know, where it's not the right thing, in a way. And then it worked out cool. This is funny, this lady. I love that Derek Jeter, you know, gives her a hug when we took this picture. Afterwards, she comes up to me and gives me her business card, and she's a SAG actress. And I thought for sure she was from one of the apartment buildings nearby. And she was hired, she was cast for this part in the commercial. And the woman that was the wardrobe stylist for this thing is the only stylist I've worked with since this thing. I got her name and number like I've never worked with anybody else, because I just thought it was great. You know, she just got all these people looking like they were, like she wardrobe. all these people, everybody. Like there's nobody that came in their clothes. Like you just assume these, like he's there, but you figure they're the neighborhood folks. No. It's like they were all brought in. So I just thought she was amazing. And for like, in a sense, high fashion types, wardrobe stylists that I've worked with, I've had a terrible time with. Maybe I just haven't worked with the right people. But it's the kind of thing where I'll say, like, oh, I need a white shirt and blue jeans for the guy. And at the shoot, they'll show up with like a white t-shirt and one pair of blue jeans. They'll say, oh, you know, summertime, you think you can find a t-shirt? I looked everywhere. You know, it's the kind of thing where just want to get a flamethrower, you know. I'll breeze through these. This was a series of ads for Merrill Lynch, like a wealth management thing we shot in California. And these were all done on a 4x5, swung and tilted all over the place to get a very shallow depth of field. I'll just zoom through these. I really like these a lot. They're just, you know, they're very, very different, say, from the Nike things, in that these are very polished, carefully lit, shot at the right time of day, and all that kind of stuff. Actually, this and this, we actually use the same house. That's an interior, that's an exterior. And actually, this is the pool. That's another view of that same pool. So one of the things when you're doing advertising is try to maximize your budget by, if you can use a location more than one way, that's a good thing. So that's like when I was showing you the picture of the St. Louis Rams, the football guys. It's like trying to see different points of view. Because originally we went there just to find this picture. And the same thing, same thing. This one's shot in Italy, and again, it's a matter of like putting strobe lights out the windows to get the late afternoon sun feeling coming in. It was a cloudy day. But back from when I was assisting, it's like, oh, the light's all shitty, it's a cloudy day. You know, like that kind of thing. Wanting to not be subject to that. And it was fun, like we're shooting in this house. They were shooting a TV commercial of this, which is why we shot it. And the prop person, who's probably getting somewhere between $150 and $200 million an hour, because it's a union like prop person, they had all these prints made for the guy because he's supposed to look like he's a photographer. And the one thing they hadn't brought was a camera. So that's actually my 4x5. This was shot in like 92 or 3. It was a series of ads for Benson Hedges. Again, for me, this is way pre-Photoshop stuff. They did all the retouching on it. But the discipline of this helps me a lot now in Photoshop because I had to shoot these all as separate elements that would work perfectly together. So you can't fly this close to the Statue of Liberty in a helicopter. So I took a helicopter over New York Harbor, you know, several hundred yards off the statue, nowhere near it, but at that height, and actually shot a handheld 4x5 and shot down when the Staten Island ferry's coming by, so we had the background picture. Then I had the model maker, the guy that made the chair for Shaq. He did 2 models. He did a model, rather, of the Statue of Liberty, the bust. It was probably about 6 feet high, down to her waist, sort of perfectly detailed, like the little points on the crown, perfectly hammered, copper with little tiny rivets that's all been acid etched and aged. It looked amazing. So we shot that, actually shipped that out to the desert in California to shoot it in open sun so that it would be sunlit and feel like sun. And then right next to it, we had a set builder build a full-size crown with those points just out of plywood painted green so that the people could sit and hang and be on it how they wanted to be, right? And I was able to actually, again, it's in the Stone Age time, I had 4x5 Polaroids and we cut them out with the scissors and put them over each other and make sure that they all lined up, you know? But that kind of stuff helps me out a ton now, doing like Photoshop stuff. This was done the same way, like the sign, the neon sign's probably about this tall, you know? The guy, the violinist, is standing up on scaffolding in a studio. It's that kind of thing. The facade of the building was shot separately. It's a model. Same thing here. Photograph the train from a helicopter. Photograph the people sitting on top of a steel train. This was shot in an old movie theater where we erected scaffolding and put the people up on it at the right height. The boat itself was a model that was about 6 feet long. Together. These are really old. It's a series of Doers ads. These were the first ads I got after Muhammad Ali. The first like black and white thing. So I'll just zip through those. This is again phony sunlight in the studio. This was ads for American Express, shooting the New York Knicks. You know, this was shot like at 10 o'clock at night, but it feels like outdoor street ball kind of feeling. These were done for Zocor, an ad campaign for Zocor. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I get one great ad campaign like this probably at least every 6 or 7 years. So this was the most recent one. It was 2 years ago. This was shot for a crappy TV movie of like a hospital that was flooded in Houston. But it's interesting because the lights that look like flashlights aren't, they're photographic lights. And they're on stands that are hidden by the people's arms. And his face is lit by other lights, but it kind of looks like it's coming from that light. It's all that kind of stuff. He's actually running. Gregory Heisler, fantastic. Again, looking for sort of more of a period look at the lighting. This was trying to not replicate, but certainly referencing a still photo that was done with Bill Bojangles from the time, as was this. This was done on another crappy TV movie called Purgatory. It was a Western. And it was shot on 8x10 Polaroids, only so that they could be used in a sense as a magnet to get the actors interested in coming over. That was really what it was. Plus, it obviously has a good look for this application. This is, again, the lighting thing. This was for yet another TV movie we did in Canada. We had this whole set built to match an exterior location that they had shot the movie at that was already done. So this whole set was built, and it was lit for daylight, and then I lit it for nighttime. So we get both things. These are for CNN. It's Donald Trump at his golf course. This was an old bounty hunter out west. These are just some random portraits I'll zip through. That was a CNN one of Larry King. This is the chairman of J.P. Morgan doing his I'm a little teapot pose. This was Hillary Clinton in the White House. That's when I went there for the first time after I was banned. I like that picture. I just photographed her last week because she's coming out. She came out with a book 10 years ago called It Takes a Village. Called It Takes a Village. Let's keep an eye on my husband. And she's reissuing that. So re-photographed her. That's him in the Oval Office. This one, I love this picture. It's like it feels like it's lit by window, you know, the kind of window light kind of feeling. There's lights out the windows, there's lights in the background, there's all kinds of stuff going on. He actually has this eagle in his house. That's his house. This guy was the retiring chairman of the New York Public Library. And I just wanted a super distinguished picture of him in the library. And again, I did a lot of testing for this. It's all strobe lit, but the light, I wanted the light to feel justified, like the light on the side of his face that's cool, feels like it's coming from those windows. The other light feels like it's coming from the chandeliers. Ed Koch, Bloomberg, Elliot Spitzer. These were done at a symposium that happened in San Francisco about 15 years ago that Gorbachev sort of sponsored. It's called the State of the World Forum. And these are the things where I really had one frame of each person. It's done very quickly. I had two lighting setups, this one and another one. This one was full length, 3/4 length. And I would get one frame of each person.
It's such a treat to have you. If you could go to questions,
Sure.
it would be great.
I actually just left them.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah.
So I'll zip through these. There's these guys. These are character actors. There's Tyler. That's actually a 150-year-old photographic backdrop. He's the biggest asshole on earth. If somebody wants to ask me a question about him later, I'll tell you. That's the house Joe Pompiliano grew up in. Chairman of the board picture. It's from Branson, Missouri. Oh, this one I have to show you. It's cute. It's done for an ad for like a literacy ad for reading. Again, it's a lighting thing. This was done at 10 o'clock at night in a studio. And to me, the feeling of it feels like it's in a beach house in the morning. You know, that kind of feeling. And it's all about the light. We're at the tail end here. This is one of the pictures I shot in Springsteen's photo house. That's another one. Actually, if you got the new album, The Seeger Sessions, all the pictures, and there's like a little video, they were all shot in this house. There we go. Oh, here we go. Here's copyright. I have to show this. So here's why I'm a poop about copyright stuff. We were talking about this last night. I shot this picture, it ran as a double truck in time, it had my name right on the bottom. I went to the Whitney Museum the next year, or in '83. They had a show called How Others See Us, which is how artists from overseas see the United States. The very first thing when he walked off the elevator was this. I could not get a lawyer to take it on. So I don't know what, at that point, my feelings were my bother. I hate to say it, but my feelings were my bother. It's like that seems pretty clear to me. I don't know how to say. You know, it's even a digital print. It's computer printed. So.
What did the lawyer say?
The artist is from China and they don't have copyright laws there, so it'll just be a waste of time. More than one attorney. And I said, why don't we go after the Whitney?
Right.
They know better. They saw it. They know it was in Time, and their catalog was even referenced. Oh, it's from Time magazine. It's like, that doesn't make it okay. And after a while, I wasn't going to finance it myself to do it. And I also, in a sense, didn't want to be perceived as being anti-art. It's like, I might be nuts. I think I'm an artist. Screw this person. You know, I mean, what I really wanted to do was for them to bring the artist over and for me to smack him on the face and tell him he's a bad person. He didn't have to pay me any money at all. I just wanted to stand in front of a large crowd of people and say, this guy copied my work. He stinks. Everybody say boo, and then he can go back home. That's all you want. I mean, most legal things, like you want to kick the person's head in with a baseball bat, that's it. But instead you pay a lot of money and it takes years. Harry Belafonte. These guys had a special ops. This is the helicopter picture I did for Business Week that I was telling you about. This guy's the guy who found the Titanic, Ballard, Robert Ballard. And I wanted him, again, lit like he was lit by one of those little underwater Alvin kind of things. The only reason I'm showing you this picture is it's cute because the guy's actually standing down on the rocks, way down there on the beach. He's just kind of like lined up. This is cute. I like this because the Dobson's. This guy's the guy that did the landscape stuff for the Getty Center. It's a dance company. These are, again, lit the way they're lit. It was, I think, for Forbes on the E-Gang. They were all the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. A poster for Soul Food. This is not Photoshop. This is actually her reflected in 5 mirrors, just because. It's another one of him. There's many of these to go through. I'm just going to sorry. This I like a lot. This I shot after the trial, and I had the table made and the chair, and I just had this picture in my head, and I felt like ultimately, you can think whatever you want to. Ultimately, he knows his own truth, whatever it is, and it's really just that. It's as simple as that. Why is that? Oh, this is a story on chefs. New York chefs. Jeff Bezos. This was shot in Malibu on a beach. Backdrop. He was starring in a movie about Hell's Kitchen at the time. No, it's okay. They're all same. And this is a little series I did for myself because I play banjo, so these are all banjo guys. And I shot it like at a banjo convention thing several years ago. So I just like the way they're all banjos. That's good. The tie, the best tie. And I just love the range of people that play this instrument, the range of variations of it they play. Okay, that's it. I apologize, I didn't engage my time. Yeah, we started. Yes. Yes. Not in that way. I mean, I feel nervous before every single shoot, just because I do. I mean, a person who was really fun, who I was a fan of, not in the Starstruck way, but I just like, was a great little jazz singer who passed away. Her name was Carmen McRae. She's like a peer of Ella Fitzgerald. There's a story for life about all these people. But anyway, she was just funny, down to earth and funny. We were photographing like Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald, Mel Torme, all those singers for A Story for Life. And they were interviewing them and kind of about each other and about Sinatra. It was on the occasion of Sinatra's 75th birthday, so that's what it was. And they were all kind of very, what you'd expect. Like, oh, here's a great influence, and blah, 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 and this and that, you know. And she just sat down and she walked in and just, I'm quoting, said like, and I love people like this because you know it's going to be great. she just walks in, the first thing she looks at you and says, if there's one thing I hate, it's having my motherfucking picture took. So it's like already, you know, it's going to be a good day. Because she's just right there. She's not going to give you a hard time in front of the camera, she's just laying it out there, you know. And she was tons of fun, and the interview was great. She said, like, Meltone Man. She said, honey, talk about Meltone Man. He seems like a C-A-U-C-A-S-I-A-N, and you know what I'm talking about. That kind of stuff. And I took her out to her car. She was just fun, like really fun the whole time. Took her out to her car. And it's in LA, and she had obviously Vanity plates on the car. And it said KMBA Kimbo. I didn't know what it was. I said, what was that? She said, oh, you know what that is? I tell people it's like Senegalese for Cleveland or something. I said, well, what is it? Kiss my black ass. She was probably my favorite. Another guy who was my favorite was this guy, Dean Camden, who invented the Segway. He was just a brilliant guy. He was real interesting, really funny, really articulate. Robin Williams is like most comedians are horrible to shoot because they're super not funny when they're not on. They're either very depressed or really irritable or catatonic just about kind of thing. And there's no way to win. It's like if you're not funny, then you're an asshole because you're not funny. And if you try to be funny, then you're an asshole because you're trying to be funny around the comedian. So it's like, well, if you want me to shoot myself now, like, what do you want me to do? There's no way. And he's one of those guys that just has sparks flying off the top of his head all the time. Supposedly he's a coke fiend. I can't even imagine what that would be. He's like, when he's straight, he's not, you know? And he's just really, really funny and really fun human being. So those people I like a lot. Yep.
You talk a lot, and you can tell in your images that, none of them, for the most part, they don't look like they look like career. Anything, especially the night ones. They just look like it happened. You found the perfect spot. Can you talk about a little bit of techniques, thoughts, and processes?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a big thing. Lighting is a big thing for me, probably to a fault, I would say. But for me, it's definitely, it's the first thing I think of. Again, everybody works differently, and there are a million ways to take pictures for sure. Mine's just the best. But there are a million ways to take pictures. But it's like, I've heard other people talk, and then for them, it's like the technical thing they would want to think about it. They have other people do it. All they think about is the relationship with the person. There's a million ways to do it. For me, I'm just drawn to the look of the picture, how it looks. It's like it's an eyeball experience, so that's a big thing for me. And in the end, it's like it's photography. It's light pictures. You know what I mean? And like if you don't control the light, that's the biggest part. And there are photographers now, like I said, they're like lighting technicians and this and that, and it's like, so what are you, an aimer? Oh, I aimed it. It's like, I don't know, what is that? I mean, literally, I work with people, I have assistants, especially now, no kidding, it's like, get them lit, I'm going to make phone calls, I'll be here in an hour, and it's like that kind of, So I feel like that's not something, I don't have any desire to like delegate that. That's the fun part. Like, what's more fun? I'll make calls. Like, what am I going to do that's better? That's the fun part to me. Actually, there's a guy who's a terrific photographer and a really bright guy. He's actually chair of the photo department at Bard College, Stephen Shore. And he got a grant and wrote a book several years ago called The Nature of Photographs. Right? That's pretty heavy. Like, if you call a book The Nature of Photographs, you want to be right. Like, it's not, the book wasn't called What I Think About Photographs or Some Musings on Photography. It's the nature of photo, like, you want to really be right. So, it's a thin book. I do see it in the bookstore. And it is actually interesting. He's a really articulate, interesting guy. And he talks about the picture plane and the sense of moment, all these different aspects of what constitutes a photograph. You know what never gets even a mention in the whole book? Light. Because he's not a lighter. Not even a lighter, but just, if we turn off the lights in this room and take a picture and shoot with the lights on, I think it's going to make a difference. I don't know. It's like we shoot the movie set before it's lit and the movie set after it's lit and it's the same set. I think it's going to, I don't know. I'm crazy, I don't know. So for me, that's the biggest thing. When I'm thinking about what I'm going to be shooting, I kind of have to get the grippies on the lighting first, and then the picture kind of forms in my mind more. But even with that, the next thing I will think about is how the person's going to relate to it. Like when I teach workshops, and I do a bunch of them, I always have the photographers in the class team up in pairs, which switches during the week, so they're all photographing each other. Because everybody takes a workshop like that. They all want to shoot like the pretty model or the two for shoot. And it's like, it's like shooting fish in a bucket. It's like, it ain't that hard. So I mean, it's true, like any asshole can take a nice picture of the Tyler. So what? You know what I mean? And anybody can take a nice picture of the two fishermen, that's fine. Most people I can shoot look like us or worse. You know what I mean? And I just think, that's what I have to do, that's the picture. But more importantly, what they get is the experience of being on the other side of the camera, and they see how time passes on the other side of the camera, and that's huge. Huge, huge, huge. I mean, it's everything from, is the strobe too noisy, like, is the strobe noisy? Is it bright? Is it hot? Was it, I feel like I'm closed in, is it all right? You know, there's a whole thing about the distance you work from people. You know, I got my picture taken once with Arnold, actually, for a magazine, a thing about mentors, and this guy that shot our picture, I don't know who he is, I don't remember his name. He was an Israeli guy. And we shot in a rental studio, and this guy was shooting us full length, on seamless, with softbox too far away. And he was like in, you know, Minneapolis. He was like, he was shooting with a Hasselblad with a 250 for a full length picture. So he's way out there, right? And Arnold and I are standing here like just two, you know, sardines on seamless. And the guy says, okay, guys, you know, like, do something, okay? I was like, we're not buddy, you know, we're kind of, you know, we're doing the guy thing, we're both standing like this, you know, what are you gonna do? And then just when we start talking, he shoots a few frames and he stops. And then he reloads film, and we can't even see him, we hear the fan from the speedophone. And then we kind of look, and he's literally, his assistant's reloading the Hasselblad, and he's standing there, he's smoking a cigarette like this. You know, it's like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And there's spaces that work and spaces that don't. Like a lot of my portraits are shot, not always, but as often as possible in a conversational space. You can determine that real fast. Like if you're far away, it's hard to maintain contact. As soon as you get past a certain point, you have to kind of be in love with the person. But once you're like kissing distance, you're in their space. You know what I mean? So it's like and that can be good or bad. It's like that's a big issue for me. That will determine focal length as much as anything. So it's that. Yes?
So what I'm getting from what you're talking about is that either you don't like ambient lighting or you like to recreate your own ambient lighting when you're making the scene.
Oh, okay, let me talk about that because I never even asked you a question about that. The scoop is that my theory of lighting. Get out your pants. Now, my theory of lighting is I sort of feel like lighting falls into two categories in a way. Lighting that recreates natural light. So lighting that's natural. And all it's doing is bridging the gap between how the film or chip would see the light and how your eyes do. Like your eyes can see the ambient light in a certain way, the film or chip doesn't. It's very different. So you have to do lighting to bridge that gap, either to simulate, either to replicate what's actually there, or maybe in the studio you want to replicate this lighting. You know what I mean? So one thing I'm always doing with that is paying really close attention. Like I'm not one of these people that carries a camera around all the time, which is probably not a good thing. But mentally, I'm definitely always going to click, and I will use that later. Like I'm always thinking about it and noticing the light and stuff, and that's what I'll use as food for thought later on. I mean, it literally could be something being in a bar, and the guy's, bartender's washing out the glasses, and he's lit by the thing. You know, it could be anything, whatever it is. The color of the light, the look of the light. The other kind of lighting, really, in the end, is lighting for effect, which has nothing to do with reality. It's about being artificial, and it could be a special effect, like an effecty looking, or it could just be like what normally studio lighting is. You know, like an umbrella up here, and that's, it has that kind of look, and that's fine. It's not like you're trying to replicate something, you're just going for a look. So you're either going for the natural thing, but so the film will see it the right way, or you're going for the other thing. That's kind of how it goes. And I don't have a standard. That's one of the things that will drive my assistants nuts, actually, is because I don't have the standard kit. It's not like, oh, we have to shoot tomorrow morning, I'll meet you at 7, they already have the cases ready to go. It's like, what is it today? Today. It's like that kind of thing. Like, and I have one assistant, this woman, Cheryl, who is awesome. She was absolutely an ox. She's like this big musical person. And she got sick of it after 2 months, shooting with every goddamn thing. It's like, we're going to get there and you're going to say, where's the blah blah, and I'm not going to have it. I'm sick of it. Like, I'm taking everything. And she would just bring everything every time. And she was right. Because in the end, I would need the thing I hadn't thought of, because I did some stupid idea or something, But it's that. It's not formulaic. It's not like, oh, I really prefer this, or I really prefer that. And a big thing, again, not to get into it, but like, like I rent pro photo stuff, strobes, they're too expensive for me. I'm a successful guy. It's like the packs are $5 grand a piece. The heads are $2,500. I'm like, I don't have the time to spend on that. I got kids, man. Like, I'm not gonna, even if I have it, I'm not gonna spend it on that. So I can do editorial work. Yeah, great. Do that. It's really great. I'll rent it and they'll pay for it. It's fine. But you can do great stuff with that, but in the end, all those strobes are doing is replicating some kind of light that you see anyway. You know, I mean, like if I can use their $2,500 strip light that just came out, because it's very beautiful and I use it. Or I can go to Home Depot and get a 2-foot fluorescent and gaffer tape it to the sofa in somebody's hand. I mean, literally, that's what I've done. So it all exists. It all exists. You know what I mean? Like we can shut off all the lights in here, all of them, open that door and look at the shaft of light that gets cast across the floor by the hallway lights, right? But that's a long exposure. So if I'm shooting a guy standing here and I want him standing in the pool of light that comes from the hallway, I'll put a strobe head out there and do it. But it's only because I want the film to see it in the right way. You know what I mean? But pretty much anything you can buy for $10,000 at a camera store, you can buy at Home Depot for $250. You know what I mean? You kind of can. It's all the same stuff. It's just non-specialized. You know what I mean? And especially, I would have to say with digital, that's the beauty of it. Before, it's like, oh my God, you need filters and this and that. It's like, forget it. I don't even use the color. I bought the $300 Macbeth color patch, like a color piece of cardboard instead of your standard color chart sheet. And you need these little gray patches. If what I was doing a fashion catalog, where this brown had to be this brown, then you need it, for sure. If I was shooting, fabric swatches or carpeting samples or paints, chips, then you have to have it. But for me, the color is completely subjective. I just wanted to look how I wanted to look. And half the time I change it anyway. And so it doesn't matter. Is that helpful? Yep.
Would you rather shoot film black and white or straight black and white?
Now, for sure, clear. I hate it and it's mind-boggling. I'd be as if I like doing it with a goat. Like I wouldn't want anybody to see me do it, but it was really fun. I never kind of pictured myself as that kind of guy. But it's like, wow, it's pretty like kind of amazing really when you get right down to it. It's like that. Like there's nothing I love about it except when you actually start using it. It's unbelievable. Like I mean, I could get detail in areas that I never had detail in. When you do Photoshop, you use a thing called channel mixer, and you can actually make parts of the picture look like you shot it through a red filter, and other parts of the picture look like you shot it through a green filter. It's unbelievable. Again, I would have before, not now. Not now. It's too cool. Like you actually get your Kodachrome and your Tri-X on the same click. It's too cool. Yep.
For all the pluses of digital, the one thing I'm still struggling with is the long-term archiving of digital. So what's your strategy for this?
No, look, it's one thing I must say it's one thing that's put me off using it for a long time, is in the end, it's ones and zeros floating in space, man. There's nothing. It's a concept. I mean, that's the thing that's ironic, is that people think of digital stuff as being less valuable, like inkjet prints and things like that, because they're, you can spit out 1 million of them or whatever. But the truth is that until you make a hard copy of whatever it is you shot, not even a digital backup, if you don't have some kind of hard output, it's just a concept. The picture might not as well as even exist. I think about that a lot. Like when I get richer, what I would do is from every shoot that I do, I would pick my 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 favorite pictures, and I would have them output to chromes, and when I'm really wealthy, I'd have them output to black and white separation negatives, like 3-color separation negatives. Those will be here. The digital, like I have stuff from the early, like the Ted Turner thing, that's on a SideQuest cartridge. Maybe I could buy something on eBay that'll play it. It's dead. I never had it out because it's dead. So I think that's a big issue. I think it's valid. I think all I can do now, which is what I'm doing at present, is I back up my stuff in 3 places. Like I back it up on hard drives where I am. I back it up on another hard drive that actually sits remotely in like a temperature-controlled vault. Because supposedly the CDs aren't as archival anymore. But it's all a big concern. It is. And of course, the time when people really start to take notice is the first time the shit hits the fan. A lot of stuff gets lost. That's the way it's going to be. But I think that's something to be concerned about.
Unrelated question. You're using the Canons. How much is enough in terms of megapixels? Where does it reach? Is it there already?
I mean, I'm using the one that's the, 17, 16.9 megapixels, whatever it is. That seems awesome to me. And I have, like, I'll shoot the Hasselblad with the bigger backs. If a client asks for it, I actually have not seen a big enough difference to warrant doing it. Like, again, I'm the guy who stuck on 8x10 stuff, so if it's worth it, I'll do it. I won't buy it, but I'll rent it and I'll use it. It's fine. I haven't seen a big enough. We just did a shoot a couple weeks ago where the client requested it, and I actually, when we were doing our lighting test, I shot with a Canon, just so I'd have files to compare. Not a big, where I noticed it actually, like the pictures of that guy that I showed at the very beginning, like you don't need more than that. It's fine. You know, the difference is in chromes, you never look at your chromes with a 100x loop. Like, you'd see molecules, you'd see atoms. I mean, like, I use Apple lenses on my 8x10s, and the chromes look really crappy when you look at them with that much magnification. And these are like the best lenses you can get, they're great. It's just the nature of it. But, you know, the first thing people do with digital files, like, you know, you go like crazy. I just think you don't need it. The deal is more, where I notice the differences, like the picture of the guy is cheating in a way because it's very selective focus, so the sharp parts look really sharp, and the other parts don't. That's one thing. And the other thing is, the scale of it is that his eyelash takes up many pixels, right? Where I notice that it breaks down, it's not a big, and it certainly breaks down less than film would, but because it's digital and you blow it up, you tend to look at it, you notice it, is if I shoot a full-length picture of a person standing by the wall, and then I zoom into his face, it's less satisfying. It's just not as much as you'd like it to be. You wish it was more. But I've gotten around that. Like I did a portrait of a guy who was going to be really big. I shot it on the Canon. I'm sorry. I shot it on a medium format one, but it was like 2 years ago, so it was probably like an 11 megapixel back or whatever it was at the time. And what I did is I shot it on a 4x5 on a Sinar, and I made it so the back would shift. So basically, I would shoot his butt once, and then shoot 30 pictures of his face when he would, you know, move. And then if he actually moved, I'd shoot another picture of his butt, and then shoot the rest of his face. And that way, I went from 11 megapixels to 22 because I was actually putting them together. You know what I mean? It's just with people, it's so much harder to work that way. If you're shooting still life, other people can do it. But I just think files that are bigger are a drag. Like the computer gags on them, they're slow to work with, they're a pain. I don't really want them any bigger.
Yeah. Well, one more follow-up. Can you, real quick, talk between shooting in RAW and shooting in JPEG?
You can't shoot in JPEG. You can't. That's why I won't let you. Because you can make a RAW into a JPEG whenever you want to, but you can't make the state more rare. Like you can't go the other way. And if you open JPEGs and do any kind of manipulation and then close it again, it throws information away. And if you do that just 2 or 3 times, your picture is screwed, pretty much. So you have to shoot RAW. There's no excuse not to. I mean, storage and cards, they're so cheap it wouldn't matter. I would only shoot RAW. It's amazing. Yep.
I'm not sure you started out as far as your photography study, it seems like a really wonderful, inspirational, personal story about women's different photography. So what? Do you have any advice, knowing changes in the industry and everything else about keeping that inspiration and experience?
For young students starting out, I find the best way to get into is sexual pictures. That's the way. I mean, portfolios will get you so far. I think the big thing really is. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, we actually talked about this yesterday. For an assistant, this is something I always did, like I do with my subjects. I always put myself almost to a fault on the other side of the coin. You know what I mean? Instead of thinking, wow, she's really cute, let's go on a date, I think, what's she going to think of me? You know, it's like it's always the other way. So I feel like I was with Arlen or anybody else, I feel like as an assistant, that's how I was. And that's how I am with clients. Like I was never in a rush to show people my pictures, because I feel like if I wait a year, I'll have better pictures. I mean, there's obviously plenty of things that, but I felt like that was okay. And for assistants, I think that you have to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're trying to see. Like, if you send out 1 million resumes to 1 million people, it's almost like you throw enough stuff at the wall and something sticks. If you put yourself in the position of a photographer and you get a resume from somebody and it looks okay, and then a week later they call and say, oh, remember I sent you the resume, and you say, oh, look, I'm really busy, call me in a month. And then on the 31st day they call you again. And when they finally get you on the phone, instead of saying, hey buddy, I couldn't get a job with Andy, so I called you. That kind of stuff. It's like they say, oh, I saw the pictures you shot and blah, 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 and I really like that. Like, who are you going to hire? You know what I mean? I just think that's the kind of mindset. And I also think you have to concentrate your efforts like, in terms of promotion. I've never been a big one for sending out 1 million mailers because you can't be nice to 1 million people. You can be really nice to 5. You know what I mean? It's that kind of, like, in the end, how many magazines do you want to work for? How many good angle report designers are there? How many ad agencies are doing your work? So it's like you can say, I want to make sure these people know me. So that would be good. The other thing, though, as an assistant, and it's a big thing, is you have to put yourself, again, in the framework mindset of the photographer. It's like for me, and I'm ashamed to say this, but it's true, I don't actually look at an assistant's work to see if they have good work. That's a bonus if they do. That's just better. But I'm not actually hiring a consultant. I'm hiring somebody who's packing my parachute before I jump out of the airplane, and I don't want it to probably be okay. Otherwise, I'll die. I'm serious. Like I would rather hire somebody who's not the best photographer, who makes sure my parachute is packed. You're like, oh, it'll probably be okay. That's not good. Like, I would have done it, but my old lady, it's like I can't have it. It's like it's not like I'm a Nazi about it, but it's important. And it's the kind of stuff where when they don't do it, I do it. And then I come the next morning, like, it was important enough for me to stay here, man. It's like, you gotta do this. It can't be sort of but that's the difference with photography. It's not like writing or oil painting, like you can't make it better later, even with Photoshop. It's like you marshal all your creativity and all your technical expertise and everything for that moment. And if it's not there, you don't get it. So it all has to be there. And the more prepared I'm a big fan of preparedness and technical knowledge because I feel like that leaves you free to improvise. If you suck at playing the saxophone, you're not going to be, you're not going to be good playing jazz. You have to be able to do stuff effortlessly, and then you can flow along and have fun. But for some reason now, the perception is like, well, the technical stuff's like so heavy. It's like, knowledge is what frees you up, for sure. I think so. Yep.
I like the way you explained how you think about writing. And I was just wondering if you can recommend something to explain, like where does person start with understanding writing?
Boy, it's tough. I don't know of any publication that's like that. I don't know of one. What I can tell you for sure, and I'm not pitching these, but I know about them, is a guy I know from my assistant days, who then ended up being a life photographer, is just about to get a book published that he's worked on for years. That should be like the Bible. It's a little daunting. I like this stuff, and I call him out to you. If I saw this in front of me, I don't know if I'd like it. It's like 700 pages. It's a lot. But it's in very plain language, and what it literally talks about is the language of life. And it's all about life. How the chip sees it, why you use a big soft box instead of a little soft box, what color temperatures and why you even care about it, why a big soft box too far away is the same thing as a little soft box close. It's like all these things that are just, some people kind of get. It's awesome.
So it's probably take little parts of.
That's what I suggested him. I actually suggested him that he even do a Cliff's Notes. And I said, do it with a moron section. If you want to know more on this, you can refer to it. But like, literally do it with something, or publish it loosely. Like do it in like little bits or something. His name is Toby, Tobey, Sanford, Sanford, and I'm sure it's like, I don't even know what I should know. It's like tobysanford.com probably. But you should look, and I think it's called something like that. But it is beyond thorough and great, for sure. That's number one. The second thing is, and I actually don't know about this except that I just heard about it. There's a photographer on the West Coast named Michael Greco who does lots of entertainment stuff, movie posters and entertainment weekly things and stuff like that. He's a big lighter and does lots and lots of lighting. And I just got an email from him literally 2 days ago before I came on this trip that said he's just coming out with a book about lighting. So my hunch is Toby's book would teach you things that you could use anywhere. I have no basis to say this because I don't know Michael's book. Michael's book would be very practical because I've seen he's done things like PDN where he'll say how he did some of his extra diagram. So that to me is great, but it's too formulaic. Like what you don't want. Like I don't want to say, here's how I light this dark wood paneled wall. Because the truth is, you could go someplace tomorrow and set up my lighting. What you want to know is, oh, if you put the light here, it does this, and if you use this kind of light there, it does that, and then you figured it out. But I think his thing will probably be really informative, because he really does know his stuff there. And it's Michael Greco, GRECCO. So I would check out those two things. I've never seen another lighting book. And you think there should be. I find the ones like from the 40s, like portrait photographers that have like, you know, high front, the kick light, the, you know, monster light, like all that kind of stuff. That's all I really see. Anybody else? Yes. Yes.
All right. Could you talk a little bit more, Greg, about how you approach your subjects? You earlier discussed how their response to the environment is so important. Could you elaborate a little bit further? And I'd be curious about your mental process. Let's say you're meeting a big-time actor for the very first time. Do you research that person ahead of time? If so, what do you try to learn about them? Or how do you approach that? And what are the first things that you say? What goes through your mind? Am I going to be friendly, or you know what I mean? That sort of thing.
I can tell you what, you know what I'm going to do? Hold on, don't go away. We're going to try an experiment. Where's the one that shuts it off? I was going to try this without. Let me try that. If you can hear me without this, I'm just going to hand this over to Mike because he's. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. No, it's fine. It's like it was. On wireless. So like a long time ago, again like 15 years ago or something like that, I actually saw an article in, it might have been like the ASM or something, but it was a story about shooting a CEO in a public company, and they interviewed Jamie Zell and Bert Lynn, and it was the funniest thing, because they're two completely different people. Bert Lynn is like a very, very, very famous Magnum photographer, and he's like one of the guys that kind of supported Magnum over the years because he does like and Jamie's those so they, and the questions were like, you know, how do you approach the CEO, what do you do, that kind of stuff. And it was fantastic, because Glenn, you know, like they said, how do you dress? And Glenn's like, he wears these Salvador suits, custom made from London. I have my Salvador suits, I like to outdress the guy, I don't want him to think that, you know, that kind of thing. And Jay's like, I don't even know that dude. You know, he wears jeans and t-shirts. You know, if I were like, go to my knees in the week, I'm calling around the floor, get that thing here. It's totally that. And then they say, what are you talking about? And Glenn's like, I do everything I can about business. I want to be able to talk to someone. I want to hear. I want to be able to do this and that. How are you going to get a response? If they got to respect you, all that stuff. And Jay's like, shoot, man, I just make noise for the guy smile. It's so true. You know, so there's no one good way. And I can say, like, for me personally, like, I don't have to wear a tie to come here, for sure. I don't walk around in a tie. Like, my girls see me and say, ooh, what are you doing? You know, it's like I don't walk around anymore. But it's like, I'm going to wear a tie because some of you guys go over the tie and I'll take the time on you say, hey, come here, and I feel it's like respect. Right? You don't have to wear a tie because you're the audience. You say, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like I have to wear a tie. That's just my thing. You know? I feel like I've gone to the White House on photo dates, because sometimes they're cool, you know, PR directors. You can always do photo dates today. You have like the guy from music, the guy from time, the guy from New York Times, the guy from today, all there within 2 hours to the president. Like, wouldn't that make you great photography? That's what they've been doing. Oh, we got all of it once. It like looks good on the calendar. That's a horrible thing to do. And I've been there, I'm like, I'm the only guy who's dressed in a suit. I'm not necessarily impressed the president. Probably the kind of suit I wear, I think is really snazzy in the world hierarchy of suits. I thought of that. But I think I'm okay. You know, but these guys are like, you know, one guy's there and he's wearing this Prada Stormtrooper boots from top to bottom, all in black, and somebody else is there and he literally looks like he just came off the skateboard. He literally got like cut-offs and sneakers. You know, it's funny to me. It's just weird. Although I can also understand that probably, like when I shot W, this picture of him, standing in the picture, there's an article in American Photo just recently about assistants, and this one guy, Monty Eisen, who's a real great guy, he's an assistant I work on freelance places. He started shooting on Green Screen really well. He's Mr. Personality Plus. He's a great guy. You can see why he works with people. And taking this picture. But apart from that, he's just, nice. We were at the White House, and he was kind of like, yeah, I mean, it was a green t-shirt, but I don't have a t-shirt, I don't even think he had khakis in my bag. And we were in that cabinet room. We had two setups, one in the cabinet room, one downstairs in the bathroom. And I had two, mini crews of assistants so that somebody was with each thing. Monty was in the first one. And Bush just kind of took a shine to him. He's like, he was the guy that he started relating to, so Monty, what about, that kind of thing. No, you're going to tell me if my fly stuff, aren't you, Monty? Just whatever, joking. Because he's like real people, And sure enough, downstairs, when it was all done, Bush said, let's get a group picture with everybody, which is very nice. He doesn't have to do that. Everybody gathered together. He looked at his photographer, the White House, and said, where's Monty? And it's like, so I can understand it's all part of how you do it. You can do it any way you want to. If I was Shaq, I can go in there in my warm-ups because I'm Shaq. I'm a professional athlete. You know what I mean? If I'm John McEnroe, I can do that. I just feel like it's a little weird. I feel like you always have to dress up. I wouldn't expect my accountant to wear a beret and an ascot and cutoffs to come to do my accounting. He's an accountant. You know what I mean? It only goes up, not down. But I can also appreciate that it could be very disarming. Maybe you just don't care and you say, look, you are who you are, I am who I am, how I am. And it's take me as I am, take me or leave me, it's fine. I don't actually care. I feel like it's, in the business world, it's one less barrier. You know what I mean? It's one less barrier. A white guy in a suit. It's it's just what it is. So it's fun.
But I assume you do engage in dialogue with the subject.
To a greater and lesser extent. My dad was a salesman, so I'm big on blabbing for sure. I'm not shy at all, and I can say, again, there's a million ways to do things. It could be that if what you want in the picture is to have the person be uncomfortable, edgy, you can sit there with the camera and just not do anything until they start feeling uncomfortable. And there's all kinds of ways to do stuff. I have a really hard time with that myself. Just because again, to a fault, I picture myself on the other side and I wouldn't dig it. So I generally don't take a picture of someone that I wouldn't want taken of me. Not in a vain way, but in a just, is this cool or not way, in a personal yardstick kind of way. So I tend to be chatty. But once I'm shooting, I have a hard time because it is like rubbing your stomach and patting your head kind of thing. I have a real hard time keeping those things going at once. I don't have any neurons to spare for them. But sometimes what I'll do in a case like actually, here's a picture. I just did a picture where I needed to shoot a bunch of kids with a grown-up. And what I did is I actually hired a magician to come in, to stand right behind the camera and keep my name. Because I had enough to worry about just dealing with the person, the grown-up person. And for the kids, it was fun. It wasn't like, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like having a kid wrangle with gravel and stuff. This guy was great. It didn't cost a lot, but it was fantastic. So that's a way to go. I honest to God thought when I did that, I would bring this guy along and I'd be the CEO. So in here, outside. That's fine. Why don't we do it outside? Just so that way there's a question. Is that right?
And before you do that, and
First off, I'd just like to thank you. When I'm Daniel, by the way, hopefully you'll be close on that. When I was at RFP, I did